Morning glory, America. Bonjour, hi, Canada. Hugh Hewitt inside the Beltway. Weighted down by a stack of stuff. If you're watching on YouTube or on Rumble or on Salem News Channel, and I would recommend get the app, Salem News Channel, you will see that my stack of stuff is actually weighty this morning. I mean, it's ridiculous. Normally, I like a stack of stuff of between 14 and 16 stories. I can do that in two segments. It usually does the rundown in two segments. But there's so much going on, and I flew in yesterday from Ohio, and the fetching Mrs. Hewitt and I had dinner, and then I went to work for morning prep, and there's just too much. So I'm going to have to make this a three-segment rundown. And what's amazing to me, just genuinely amazing to me, is that Mike Gallagher comes in every single day. He got the sofa shift, right, from 9 to noon on the East. And then Dennis Prager has the second sofa shift. That's what they're known as in the business, the sofa shifts. From 9 to 3 East Coast time are sofa shifts. And so Mike gets off his sofa and goes over to the microphone and turns on the radio. He does it from his palatial residence. Well, he got 5 or 6 of them. And then he just talks to you about, how his back hurts or his, the cooking that he did last night or the show that he's been to if he's up in his New York But, some of us got to work, so here's the deal. Democrats are trying very desperately to get their massive spending plan done. It's down to $1.75 trillion to $2 trillion, which on top of the trillion in infrastructure is still so inflationary. Well, actually, I'm not going to bury the lead. I'm going to go to the lead right now. This is Lawrence Summers. Lawrence Summers was Mr. Economist for President Obama. He was Mr. Economist for Bill Clinton. He's Mr. Economist at Harvard. He's Mr. Economist. He's a Democrat. He's a liberal. He went on CNBC with David Weston yesterday, cut number 14.
David, we have transient inflation. Annual inflation in last month, according to core CPI, was above 10%. Majority of that is surely transient. We've got used car prices. We've got other examples that people cite that are clearly transient. But it is an elementary fallacy to confuse the idea that we have some transient inflation with the false proposition that all the inflation is transient and we have nothing to be concerned about. If you look at things that are longer lasting, labor shortages, pervasive. If you look at things like the largest component of the cost of living index, housing is on fire. As you know, as your listeners know, a majority of houses are selling above their asking prices. In many parts of the country, housing inflation has been close to 20%, the vast majority of which has not yet shown up in any index. And so if you look at what purchasing managers are saying, if you look at what households are expecting, all of this suggests that we're in the process of seeing a change. And the people who are big on this transient idea need to ask themselves, do they really believe that 10% growth, which we're going to have this quarter, 10% growth, which people think we're going to have next quarter, dramatic declines in unemployment or growth in labor shortage, either way, that we're going to have all that and that's going to be part of a process that drives inflation down? I don't think so.
So what Larry Summers is doing, again, former president of Harvard. I had dinner with Larry Summers once at Regents College when we were both part of a program at Regents, great program, fascinating conversation. He's a little bit unusual, and he fixes on one person, in this case me, and he converses with you for the entire dinner. Larry Summers is widely regarded as brilliant, and with good reason. So what he's telling you is inflation is here to stay, and as the sun goes up on that idea, Democrats are rushing to finish their spending plans for political purposes. And the New York Times says, Biden and Democrats push for budget deal this week as rift remains. Well, what's the rift over? How much to spend and what to spend it on, and where to get it from. Second New York Times story by Neil Orwin. Proposed tax on billionaires raises question. What's income? They are proposing the biggest shift in American taxation policy because what begins with billionaires will soon move down to 100 millionaires, then it will move down to 10 millionaires, then it will move down to millionaires, and everyone with a house will get caught by it. So they're trying to just put into place a tax framework that they can jiggle the number on in future years, but it's a highly complex thing. And billionaires, of course, aren't sitting around saying, go ahead and take my money. They're flooding town with their lobbyists to fight this. In town, I mean the Beltway, and we'll see what happens. Meanwhile, Democrats, according to the Washington Post, quietly scrambled to include immigration provision in social spending bill. Democrats are scrambling intensely behind the scene to address immigration in the framework as they are crafting to expand the nation's social safety net, according to people with knowledge of the situation, writes Sean Sullivan and Mariana Sotomayor, who's in the Washington Post this morning. Even as President Biden and other party leaders have said little publicly about their strategy in recent weeks. The most pressing question confronting Democrats is what to do about millions of undocumented immigrants seeking a path to legalization. One option under discussion is to provide a protected status that stops short of a path to citizenship. Another, which is seen by some of the people with knowledge of the situation as something of a placeholder, is to include a proposal that would enable immigrants who arrive in the United States before 2010 to apply for a green card. The talks, described with people of knowledge of the situation, some of whom spoke on the condition of anonymity because they were not authorized to disclose sensitive discussions, are said to remain fluid, with no final resolution yet. The problem is, and I have tweeted this out, the Senate's parliamentarian says the registry idea, which is being floated as a workaround from their earlier Senate parliamentarians' refusal to discuss amnesty in a reconciliation package, is not acceptable in a reconciliation package. So they're trying to jam in an amnesty on the QT. Meanwhile, another Post story this morning, John Hudson and Ellen Nakashima, in advance of climate summit, tension among Biden aides on China policy. And so the Post is now taken to pushing the lead way down. But the problem is John Kerry wants big climate gains, and he wants diplomacy with China, and neither China nor Biden want to talk to each other because they're on the brink of a very, very big confrontation in the South China Sea. And so I'm telling you right now, that's not going to get done. They're going to go off to Glasgow, and they're going to have everyone show up in Glasgow, 200 different countries, 160 countries, COP26 or something, who knows what it stands for. And they're not going to get anything done because China's not going to do anything, and the United States Senate and House won't agree on anything that will make it into reconciliation that even is passable as a pretend costume, a Halloween costume of climate change legislation. Meanwhile, across the river, with all eyes in D.C., trained on across the river in Virginia, they see Glenn Youngkin's numbers, and private polling shows him surging, harnessing, according to Politico, parent anger in a possible 22 GOP preview. Look, this has got nothing to do with 22 GOP preview. This has got to do with Virginia being in a total state of disarray under Democrat Ralph Northam and Terry McAuliffe before him. Terry McAuliffe is trying to make a comeback. Glenn Youngkin is betting on parents' anger with local school boards to help him edge out a victory in Virginia's governor's race against Terry McAuliffe. It's so bad Terry McAuliffe is now getting calls from people saying, Terry, I'm going to be late to the party next Tuesday night. They really don't want to stand around in the ballroom like Al Gore's ballroom in 2004. They don't want to be in the Romney ballroom of 2012. It's where everyone thinks they're going to win, and then they know they're not going to win. You don't want to go to those parties. They're starting to call McAuliffe and say, I don't think I want to get close to you. Do you know why? Because of stories like this one. Loudoun County forces parents to sign a non-disclosure agreement form to view the CRT-inspired curriculum that is called the Second Step, that is going to focus on the LCPS. Loudoun County School Board wants people to sign terms and conditions to display license that the Second Step curriculum, which has been singled out by the Loudoun County Parents Against Critical Theory Pact as the source of the problem. They don't want to show you why the diversity, equity, and inclusion curriculum put forward by the anti-racist organization inspired by Imran Kendi, they don't want to show it to parents. They want to sign parents to an NDA. Don't sign the NDA, parents. Use the Virginia Freedom of Information Act. But there's a reason Glenn Youngkin is surging. People have had it with bureaucrats, whether they're education bureaucrats, state bureaucrats, or federal bureaucrats. They've had it with bureaucrats, and it's less than a year into the Biden administration. I'm Hugh Hewitt. Come right back.
Now. ¿Cuánto queda?
No queda nada. Que lo siento mucho.
And that's the only time you can come to Christ, when the Spirit of God calls you to the cross. Don't you hesitate.
Have you ever thought of going to seminary?
Madre, padre, ¿quién está listo para ser transformado por el poder de su palabra?
Look for Salem Now in the App Store or go to salemnow.com.
Trending now on the Dennis Prager Show.
As you know, I tested positive the same day that you did. Along with you, I was excited to get the natural immunity and had the therapeutics ready to go, and I'm feeling great and don't want to make light of this virus, but there are treatments available, and I'm so glad you're feeling better, and I'm feeling good, and I'm celebrating 7 days of natural immunity here. So,
yeah, the issue is not making light of. If anybody makes light of, it is the people who make light of the therapeutics. We're not making light of the virus. We take it seriously enough to have taken a whole regimen of therapeutics.
Keep up with what's trending. Subscribe on YouTube and at rumble.com. Trending now on the Larry Elder Show.
The idea that I am anti-vaccine, which is what I was accused of by one commercial that they ran on radio, is a lie. I've talked about people who are in high-risk categories, that they ought to, with the consultation of their doctors, very likely take a vaccine. I certainly did. But I also believe that we ought to pay attention to the science that suggests that people who have had the coronavirus and have developed antibodies might very well be at less risk than those who have been vaccinated.
Keep up with what's trending. Subscribe on YouTube and at rumble.com.
Schools are lining up to push the transgender agenda on kids and cut parents out of the equation.
How a million children were placed with local foster families. Parents from all walks of life share their stories of overcoming the one-child policy by taking in orphans.
Go to salemnow.com.
Trending now on the Mike Gallagher Show.
Yakima County, Washington. Listen to this deputy's sign-off. After 22 years on the streets of Yakima, Washington, serving the community, this guy has to lose his job because he won't get the mandatory vaccine.
This is my final sign-off. After 22 years of serving the citizens of the state of Washington, being asked to leave because I am dirty. State 1034, this is the last time you'll hear me in a state patrol car. And Jay Inslee can kiss my
1034, thank you for your 22 years and 5 months of service to the citizens of Washington State. You've taken on many roles in your time as a patrol. In your first year, you delivered a baby while on patrol in Bremerton. You've been a DRE instructor, certified technical specialist, and reconstructionist, peer support member, part of the chaplaincy board, and a CBD trooper. You've been a great role model and mentor for all young troopers serving in the area by sharing your knowledge and experience throughout the years. Thank you for your service. 1906.
That's an absolute tragedy that this guy is losing his job after 22 years. And you heard all the things that he did while a state trooper. And he's got to lose his job?
Keep up with what's trending. Subscribe on YouTube and at rumble.com.
Sun coming up, America. I'm Hugh Hewitt inside the Beltway live on this Tuesday morning with the economic news brought to you by Birch Gold. Everyone who needs gold, and boy, you're going to need gold pretty quick. Go to hughgold.com or send my name, H-U-G-H, via text to 474747. Gold shot up to 1804. Overnight, it's trading higher. It's going to go higher and higher as the inflationary expectations and toll on the currency continue to rise. So again, if you're going to either buy gold or roll over your IRA or 401k into physical precious metals, go to Birch Gold. They've got extraordinary 5-star ratings. That's who I buy my gold from. I put my gold into a safety deposit box away from my residence, and that's it. It just sits there. And that's what it's supposed to do. Keep value or increase value. It's not a speculative play. It's a hedge against hyperinflation, which some people think is coming. I don't think we've got Weimar Republic kind of inflation coming, but I think we've got double-digit inflation coming. It's already here, in fact, if you heard Larry Summers. And that means Birch Gold, hughgold.com, or go to, or text Hugh to 474747. Abroad this morning, everything is green. England, Germany, France, all up, up, up. Yesterday, the Dow was up 84 points. On Monday, the S&P up 21, the NASDAQ up 136. The big tech stocks are reporting this week on their quarterly earnings in Q2 and looking ahead to Q4. Their quarterly earnings on Q3, and they're looking ahead to Q4. And markets are starting to feel pretty good about what Brian Westbury told our audience in Atlanta 2 weeks ago. You don't sell stocks right now with inflation coming for a year and with high growth coming for a year. You sell stocks in 9 months to a year. And so people are hanging on to their stocks, and everything is going up, including gold, because this inflation is real. So going to hughgold.com. Democrats likely to ditch U.S. methane fee amid opposition, sources say, as I continue with the rundown. Joe Manchin has said, no, we're not doing a methane tax, so that's going to go away as well. So they're in disarray. They're running around, and President Biden is not Mr. Leadership, and he's shuffling around. And meanwhile, everybody on the Hill is trying like mad to figure out how to tax and soak the rich, the billionaires, and the billionaires are fighting back. And I don't have a lot of sympathy for billionaires, but I do believe that Ron Wyden is not the guy, and his team is not the guy who I want writing complicated tax legislation with a new majority staff, right? They've got some of the old, but they've just become the majority in the Senate barely. They've just hired new staff. They've expanded, and they've come up with a new idea to tax the unrealized capital gains of billionaires, which is going to be a nightmare when we see it. And they're adding to that a secret amnesty provision, a secret legalization or normalization provision that they don't show anybody. And when you have secret tax laws and secret immigration laws not being drafted that are going to be unveiled a day before the package hits the floor, that's a recipe for what is going to be a disaster. It's also a recipe for Glenn Youngkin to rush to a victory across the river in Virginia. Also, lots of COVID news. Moderna data shows COVID-19 vaccine produced strong immune response in 6 to 11-year-olds. Parents are going to go out and get this, and I really encourage them to do so if their child has no underlying condition. Vaccine passports, by contrast, according to Telegraph in the United Kingdom, could fuel COVID and cost venues millions, says a leaked government report. They've begun to actually model human behavior in Great Britain. What happens when you put a passport requirement, a proof of vaccination requirement. Forget this passport stuff. It's just proof of vaccination requirement for venues and outdoor concerts and stuff. People stop going, or they forget their stuff, and millions are lost, as opposed to trusting in the free market and free information and education to allow people to make informed choices. Unvaccinated children and some people with countries with low rates will be exempted from new U.S. travel rules. So they figured out. Parents aren't going to get their young children vaccinated under any circumstances because it doesn't seem to faze children, especially the younger the better, and the better they cope with it. So they're not going to accept, I'm going to go get my kid jabbed with something I don't have to get him jabbed with because there's no benefit to it. Well, the New York Times and government is recognizing that parents rule. They haven't done that in Virginia. Parents have no say in Virginia from school boards, but parents rule, and policymakers are hesitating to impose a real passport requirement on kids be vaccinated for that reason. I'll be right back. There's so much more news this morning. I'm doing the rundown over 3 segments here on the Hugh Hewitt Show.
Hey, listener feedback time. You know who the standout culture warriors are this year, and we need you to nominate them in Salem's annual Culture Warrior of the Year Awards. Go to HughHewitt.com, click on the banner, and nominate your Culture Warrior of the Year. Nominations are open through 11:59 p.m. Pacific, October 30th.
Trending now on America First with Sebastian Gorka.
600,000 illegal aliens have been released into the country by CBP. 600,000 releases. And that's not counting who ICE is releasing at the order of political appointees within the DHS. So at least 600,000 releases that came across that border were released. Many with COVID, many with criminal histories. Add to that the 400,000, just short of 400,000 gotaways. Right there, that's a million.
Gotaways are ones who aren't processed or touched by DHS.
Are, first of all, gotaways are people that didn't get arrested by border, so they came across the border legally and weren't apprehended. Why? Because you're tied up with these big groups. Like we talked about this many times. Cartels in Mexico, some big groups in one area. They pose all the border patrol resources to that area. Then that's when they move their fentanyl and bad people.
Keep up with what's trending. Subscribe today at rumble.com.
Streaming on Salem Now.
The public would be outraged if they knew the truth.
Why do you think our politicians are not on the sidewalk right now talking to you?
No have no respect.
The old wall randomly turns into a guardrail, followed by miles of open border.
Human trafficking gone.
That journey is extremely dangerous.
The 7-year-old girl died in the desert.
From the country of India.
A great pillar of the community was killed by a man who had been deported at least twice.
This little urn contains the ashes of my son. His dreams cut short forever.
We're so worried about other countries' problems, and we don't even focus on our own.
Look for Salem Now in the App Store or go to salemnow.com.
Trending now on The Charlie Kirk Show.
We have people losing careers and multi-million-dollar jobs because they refuse to take the vaccine that does not 100% prevent you from getting the virus. Breakthrough cases, people with the vaccine who are vaccinated are dying, and yet they say we still need to destroy your life even if you have natural immunity, even if you have the antibodies. So one example in particular, there's two examples that highlight this, I think, rather well. The first is a place that all of you should go for lunch today, especially if you're listening on the West Coast. In-N-Out Burger. In-N-Out Burger is phenomenal. They are a wonderful company. They do a great job. The owners are Christians. And they deserve your support because now in San Francisco's only In-N-Out location, they've said, look, we are refusing to enforce the San Francisco vaccine mandate. We're not going to go ask people, show us your papers. And I'm going to be honest, people are fighting back. But to the level that we are tolerating the show me your papers, show me your medical records to go get a burger in San Francisco, America's fallen in a great regard. Now, San Francisco's its own place. San Francisco is the greatest example of anarcho-tyranny. Anarcho-tyranny where it's complete anarchy if you want to do drugs on the side of the street, if you want to defecate in a park, that's their idea of freedom. If you want to wear no clothes, you can walk through the streets of San Francisco.
Keep up with what's trending. Subscribe on YouTube and at rumble.com. Trending now on the Eric Metaxas Show.
By him, so you're at the top of your game in every way, and then you dare to write something that you weren't even dreaming of putting this in anybody's face. This was a private thing you did to share your faith. And somebody who's obviously a troublemaker decides, we're going to make an example of you. We don't like you daring to imply that heterosexuality is normative or that the Bible needs to be taken seriously. We're going to make an example of you. And even though you'd been in the department for, you said 34 years?
Well, a total of 34 years in the fire service as a whole, but I served a total of 7 years as fire chief in the city of Atlanta.
An amazing career, celebrated by the President of the United States, and then some radical comes after you and decides to make your life hell. But you had a little secret weapon called faith in Jesus. And that's what you write about in this book, isn't it?
That's exactly what I wrote about. And to be clear, Eric, the phrase America's fire chief comes from the fact that President Barack Obama appointed me to be the head of the United States Fire Administration. And so when I returned to Atlanta after serving at the United States Fire Administration, that's when God put it on my heart to write this book to encourage Christians.
What's trending? Subscribe today at rumble.com.
Streaming on Salem Now.
Welcome back, America. It's Hugh Hewitt. The Democrats are locked in negotiations with each other on how to screw billionaires and workers. And they're getting down to brass tacks, and it's costing Terry McAuliffe a great deal. The latest Emerson poll, which released overnight, tied. Now, again, that's the third one in a row that has been tied. Emerson, Monmouth, and Trafalgar all say it's tied. I don't believe it's tied. I believe Glenn Youngkin is ahead, and this is a bellwether race. It always is. The Virginia race. Now, it used to be that Virginia was much more of a red state. It is now a blue state, but blue states often elect red governors because they're so badly mismanaged. In Virginia, where school districts are in absolute chaos over quarantine rules and critical race theory, from Loudoun County to the southern part, Virginia Beach School District, just a terrible set of rules on quarantine. Kids are missing a month because their little sister came down with a cold. And it really does work that way. If the cold spreads or the virus spreads from one to another to a third to a fourth, kids are out of school for another month, 6 weeks, given the Loudoun County rules. I mean, the Virginia Beach public school rules. And Glenn Youngkin's just running around the state. He's been an education-first candidate from before the primary when he took after the State Board of Education's absurd proposal to limit accelerated math programs to children in the 11th and 12th grade. No more smart math kids before the 11th grade. No more calculus and trig for you smart math kids. No. Go back and play with the blocks. You'll be in 5th grade, and you're going to do whatever the other 5th graders do, no matter how smart you are. That doesn't fly with anyone. Poor or rich, white or black, red, white, and blue, or deep pink. It does not matter. It is a merit system that is not a merit system, and parents are up in arms, and they want Glenn Youngkin to come in and fire everyone at the State Board of Education. Tell the school boards to lean off this stuff. Meanwhile, school board candidates, incumbents are toast. Incumbents are toast across the United States for the next 2 years. If they're on a school board, don't run again, you're going to lose. Meanwhile, I want to tell you something about Key City Capital, which is a sponsor of this show. Remember, keycitycapital.com/Hugh. And remember the name Charlie Dombeck. Charlie Dombeck. And you can call Charlie at 817-796-6744. 817-796-6744. Don't rush through your phone numbers, podcasters by the million are running out there, and they're doing some interesting stuff. Like my favorite podcast is Buckeye Talk, about the Ohio State Buckeyes, and it's run by Doug LeMarise and Stephen Means, Nathan and Baird, and they always rush through the number. I have no idea what the number is at the end. I feel like calling up and texting Doug or Nathan or Stephen and say, slow down with the number. So Charlie Dombeck's number at Key City Capital is 817-796-6744. They do two things at investment capital, at Key City Capital. Number one, they save you money on your taxes because they've got the most advanced tax review strategy. They go backwards and they go forwards, and they also stay abreast of what is happening. Then they provide you with some alternative investment vehicles that can earn double-digit returns in an age of inflation. You got to consult with them. They're not shipping stuff out the door. You got to sit down with the Key City Capital people and talk to them. It's for high-income people. And so call them or go to keycitycapital.com/Hugh. Okay, our vaccine booster is widely needed. Some federal advisors have misgivings. New York Times story. What is interesting about this story is that an FDA advisor on one of the advisory panels that recommended the booster for seniors and older struggled. Other committee experts said they wanted to avoid confusing the public further by dissenting, or that they voted according to their views on the evidence and were simply overruled. What this tells us is they realized that the CDC and the FDA has hopelessly confused the public about what is good public health safety. It means that Dr. Fauci, however earnest, and Dr. Collins, however good-hearted and great-souled that they are, have screwed this up. That Joe Biden and the team Biden have screwed this up. Donald Trump didn't do much better, but whatever has happened in the last year and a half, it has shattered CDC and FDA credibility. And they have done nothing to enlist the people who can reassure about the safety of vaccines and the safety of vaccinating your children. They're very, very safe. They're very, very safe. You should go and get the vaccine, in my opinion. I'm not a doctor. If you have any underlying condition, talk to your doctor. But if you're a normal, healthy senior, you're a normally healthy adult, you're a normal, healthy teenager, you're a normal, healthy adolescent, 12 and up, go get the booster, go get the vaccine, and when you're eligible, get a booster. It's not that complicated. It saves you a world of hurt. I just met a great guy in Ohio who's recovering from a 6-week bout of COVID. He's up and around. He's feeling good. But I'm telling you, you don't want to, I don't know if he was vaccinated or not. I don't know if it was a breakout case or not. I don't ask people. It's not my business. I can make recommendations. Meanwhile, fired after endorsing vaccines, evangelical insider takes a leadership role. Daniel Darling, who was dismissed from the National Religious Broadcasters, what do you call that? NRB, National Religious Broadcasters Association, for advocating for vaccines, big profile on it. You know what, New York Times, that does not help. That does not help. There are many evangelical leaders like Robert Jeffress who are out there saying, get vaccinated. There are some who are vaccine hesitant. It's not a matter of faith. So to discuss it as though evangelicals are uniquely anti-vax or vaccine hesitant is just wrong, and you're at counter-purpose. You can't resist the bait to try and make evangelicals look like gap-teeth backwoodsmen who are handling snakes. You can't resist it, and so you run the story, and what the story does is increase vaccine hesitancy among evangelicals. Beijing Olympics will require vaccine or 21-day quarantine. Note the irony here. China unleashed this on the world through its negligence at best, and the Beijing Olympics are making everyone get vaccinated or a 21-day quarantine. I don't know why we're going to these Olympics. I don't know why we're broadcasting these Olympics. I certainly don't know why anyone would want to sponsor this government, which is a repressive, totalitarian regime which is involved in genocide and has been so declared by the Biden and the Trump administration. One of the few things they both agreed on is genocide, using slave labor of the Uyghur people. Enes Kanter, by the way, Enes Kanter, Boston Celtics. I saw online yesterday, this may make me into a Celtics fan. Jonathan Adler said that at the Case Western Reserve professor. That's not going to happen to me. I'm never going to be a Celtics fan. They beat the Cavaliers in 1976 in 6 at the Garden. I'm never going to be a Cavalier. But I can admire this man. I can admire this man greatly. And here he is talking to Nike. Cut number 13.
Dear Nike, your company says that you are making a positive impact in our communities. And that is true. Yes, you are. Here in the United States, Nike stands with the Black Lives Matter. Nike stands with Stop Asian Hate. Nike stands with the Latino community. And Nike stands with the LGBTQ community. And Nike remains vocal about injustice here in America. But when it comes to China, Nike remains silent. You do not address police brutality in China. You do not speak about discrimination against the LGBTQ community. You do not say a word about the oppression of minorities in China. You are scared to speak up. Who makes your shoes in China? Do you even know? There are so many forced labor factories in China. For instance, Uyghur forced labor in modern day slavery, and it is happening right now in China. Millions of Uyghurs are currently detained, sold, and assigned to work at forced labor camps, prisons, and factories across the country. They are under constant surveillance, with long working hours and poor living conditions. They are subject to political re-education. They have no freedom of expression, no freedom of religion, and they are not even able to leave. Did you know that almost the entire apparel and footwear industry is tainted by Uyghur forced labor? Many well-known global brands are implicated, and yes, that includes one of the NBA's biggest sponsors, Nike. Nike claims that they do not allow any forced labor in their supply chains. Yet, they don't have the receipt to prove it. They have not publicly committed to cutting ties with the Chinese government's labor transfer scheme. They have not provided clear timelines or updates about their efforts to end this. They have not publicly committed to the steps outlined by the coalition to end Uyghur forced labor. Don't forget, every time you put those shoes on your feet or you put that t-shirt on your back, there are so many tears and so much oppression and so much blood behind it all. Nike likes to say, just do it. Well, what are you doing about the slave labor that makes your shoes? That slave labor that makes you rich? To the owner of Nike, Phil Knight, I have a message for you. How about I book a plane tickets for us? Let's fly to China together. We can try to visit these slave labor camps, and you can see it with your own eyes. LeBron James and Michael Jordan, you guys are welcome to come too. Nike must be a participant in this. Stop with hypocrisy. Stop the modern day slavery now.
Did any of you, but anyone at all, see a headline? Enes Kanter calls out LeBron James over slave labor in China. Maybe you'll see Enes Kanter calls out Nike over slave labor in China. But did you see Enes Kanter calls out LeBron James? Enes Kanter is a serious basketball player. I mean, he's starting center for the Celtics. He's a serious political activist as well. He's very educated on this stuff. Has anyone seen anything about that anywhere? The answer is no. NBA, Nike, they buy a lot of ads. And as Senator Cotton has pointed out, all of the commercial networks except Fox have China ties in movie theaters, and they're not going to get cross purposes with General Secretary Xi. The communists there are ruthless in their retribution against commercial actors in the West. Bravo, Enes Kanter. Other big story, the Facebook papers. Now, I was struck by something. The Facebook papers came out in the Wall Street Journal with the whistleblower's help. The Facebook papers have put Mark Zuckerberg in a terrible situation. They're trying to hire a Washington lobbyist, according to the Post. They're offering $2.5 million to hire a big name. They're trying to hire a Democrat. That's not their problem. Their problem is not the Democrats. Their problem is everybody. Everybody hates Facebook. And I don't know who is giving Mark Zuckerberg advice. But whoever it is doesn't, it might be Joel Kaplan, who was a deputy chief of staff under George W. Bush. It might be Nick Clegg, who was part of the parliament for a long time. They are not wise. They are about 15 years behind where the people are because they don't stay up with the people. They're in Silicon Valley. But I'll tell you, the Facebook papers and their fallout, I'll have to update it in the next segment. They're going to have pretty decent sales growth, but the blowback and the rug that is coming is just incredible. More news coming up after the break. Israeli helicopters said to strike Hezbollah linked targets in Syria. There's lots going on around the world, and I'll get to all that. Let me tell you about ReliefFactor.com, though. ReliefFactor.com. It's time to take it. I told you I came back yesterday and took 2 of them because the neck is a little bit better this morning. It's going to take a couple of days. Hotel pillows. I carry in Curcumin, Resveratrol Omega, every single day. There they are. Here's my lukewarm coffee and my Gettysburg mug. Gettysburg College. Home to Fred Fielding. There it goes. I carry in Curcumin, Resveratrol and Omega. The 4 supplements. I only take 1 pack of supplements. I've only ever taken 1 pack of supplements. I've been in the air for 21 years. I've only taken one supplement in that entire time. It's relieffactor.com. Why? Because it's been confirmed that these are nature's anti-inflammatories. They work well with some people. They're overnight miracles with some people. I'm reading Ross Douthat's new book, The Deep Places. And you got to experiment, you got to try, you got to do all sorts of stuff. I'll have Ross on tomorrow to talk about this. But go get your relieffactor.com right now. Drucker is next. We're going to update how his book In Trump's Shadow is doing. And we're going to talk about the Virginia governor's race, and we're going to talk about you on the next few hours. Stay tuned.
Salem Now.
We'll see one young lady identify as transgender, and the next thing you know, 6 or 7 young ladies in that same school are now identifying as transgender.
Children taught at age 5 they can create their gender identity, and it's being celebrated.
Schools are lining up to push the transgender agenda on kids and cut parents out of the equation.
Every cell of their body that has a nucleus is male or female.
We've now seen parents losing custody of their children if they don't go along with this.
We've all been created XY or XX, so that means there's only 2 genders. And so really the battle is against the creator.
Look for Salem Now in the App Store or go to salemnow.com.
Trending now on the Dennis Prager Show.
Persuasion, the purpose of argument, is replaced with public shaming. Moral complexity is replaced with moral certainty. Facts are replaced with feelings. Ideas are replaced with identity. Forgiveness is replaced with punishment. Debate is replaced with deplatforming. Diversity is replaced with homogeneity of thought. Inclusion with exclusion. In this ideology, speech is violence. But violence, when carried out by the right people in pursuit of a just cause, is not violence at all. In this ideology, bullying is wrong unless you are bullying the right people, in which case it's very, very good. In this ideology, education is not about teaching people how to think. It's about re-educating them in what to think. In this ideology, the need to feel safe trumps the need to speak truthfully. In this ideology, if you do not tweet the right tweet or share the right slogan, your whole life can be ruined. Just ask Tiffany Riley, a Vermont school principal who was fired because she said she supports Black lives, but not the organization Black Lives Matter. In this ideology, intentions don't matter. That is why Emmanuel Cafferty, a Hispanic utility worker at San Diego Gas and Electric, was fired for making what someone said he thought was a white supremacist hand gesture, when in fact he was cracking his knuckles out of his car window.
Keep up with what's trending. Subscribe on YouTube and at rumble.com. Trending now on the Larry Show.
This feeling like I pick you up every time you fall.
Every time I take one step forward.
When Wright came in this morning, he wants to fight you.
No one expected this out of him.
Look for Salem Now in the App Store or go to salemnow.com.
Welcome back, America. That music means Drucker is in the house. David M. Drucker on Twitter with the Washington Examiner, author of In Trump's Shadow, which we had a great conversation about last week. I've seen Drucker all over the place talking about In Trump's Shadow. Good morning, David.
Good morning, Hugh.
How goes the book sales? Are you exhausted by talking about In Trump's Shadow?
Well, I'm not, but only because I'm enjoying it. And, before I was a journalist, I was in sales and marketing. And if you don't sell a good product, and then it's not going to sell. I think it's a good product. I think there's a lot of good stuff in there. You were very generous with your time. And so I've enjoyed having people react to the book, ask me questions about the book, and talking about it.
In Trump's Shadow, available at bookstores everywhere and also at Amazon.com. It informed my question matrix for the debate on Sunday night in Ohio, where 6 would-be Republicans are seeking the nomination for the seat of the retiring Rob Portman. And it's amazing how much In Trump's Shadow influenced my understanding of what was going on. 5 of the candidates were quite certainly trying to be like Trump on immigration, on voting rights, on election security. One of them, Matt Dolan, was very much trying to be like Rob Portman. That's Trump's shadow, and it goes beyond the presidential race, David Drucker. It goes down to every race.
It does, and if you want to have a good understanding of how 2024 could look, in addition to reading in Trump's shadow, which is my shameless plug for the morning, you can watch these Senate primaries unfold in Arizona, in North Carolina, in Georgia, in Ohio, where you just were, because almost every candidate, and there are going to be some exceptions like a Matt Dolan, but almost every candidate is going to be competing to prove to voters that they are the heir to Trump's legacy. I mean, this is how he has impacted the party. And I don't know for a fact that nobody's going to invoke Ronald Reagan's name, and his name deserves to be invoked. But I think we've seen a generational shift. That was one of my biggest takeaways from In Trump's Shadow. Now, some of these Republicans, and you'll see this in House races and Senate races as the campaigns unfold into 2022. You'll see this in 24. Some of them will say, I'm going to give you the best of Trump without the worst of Trump. But some of them are going to say, I'm going to give you the best of Trump with the best of Trump because there was no worst of Trump. And it'll be interesting to see how Republican primary voters react to these candidates, particularly if they don't have Trump himself in 24 as a choice. In other words, are they going to, by and large, say, the Trump agenda was amazing, so many things he did was amazing, but we could do without the attitude in terms of the self-inflicted wounds? Or are they going to say, nope, that's exactly what we want, and whoever can give us that in its totality is who we're voting for?
Yeah, David, when I considered the Glenn Youngkin campaign, Glenn Youngkin has proudly said he has combined everyone from the forever Trumpers to the never Trumpers. That is the winning formula, and you have to do it in such a way as the independents don't even think Trump is being discussed. And I look at that race, and I think Terry McAuliffe is getting a lot of voicemails saying, Terry, sorry, we're not going to be able to make it on Tuesday night. It looks like a wake over there right now. He could still pull it out, I suppose. Joe Biden's going across the river today, and I suppose anything is possible with turnout. But boy, are parents angry over Virginia schools, and not just CRT, the quarantine rules aren't driving people nuts.
Yeah, look, I have to say, because Virginia has over time become so reliably Democratic, I don't think you can rule anything out. And even Republicans who are optimistic think this thing's going to be really close. But I think where Terry McAuliffe made a mistake is without Trump in the White House, the fact that he's an ex-president, I think made the attempts to paint Glenn Youngkin as a Trump foot soldier ineffective. And I think he did not focus enough on the issues that voters care about. A lot of times this stuff is way overcomplicated. Sometimes you're on the wrong side of an issue because of what you believe or because of timing. But, Terry McAuliffe had a chance, had he done so, to say, look, I've been gone for 4 years, and I realize, what has happened while I've been gone and while I applaud my successor. We need to make changes. And he could have focused on this just as much as Glenn Youngkin did. And recognized the problem they had in the suburbs. I don't know if they took suburban votes for Democrats for granted because of how the Trump era was, but I think there was just a miscalculation there. And even if they weren't going to focus on education, I thought issue-based attacks, unless the personal attacks are present themselves in such a way that you just can't pass them up, I thought would have been much better than trying to paint Glenn Youngkin as Trump, because it doesn't answer to voters, how are you going to fix my problem?
It doesn't. And I'll tell you, last night's Politico reporting, the McAuliffe campaign near panic, and a pivot to education. If you're pivoting with a week to go and there are reports of panic in your campaign, David, what do you say? What do you think?
Well, you're in deep trouble. Look, I think it was a week or 10 days ago when Terry McAuliffe ran a television ad trying to debunk the attack on him from the comment at the debate. And I have to say, on the one hand, if you take the totality of McAuliffe's remarks in that debate, he wasn't necessarily saying what suburban parents thought he was saying. But the problem is that's what they thought. The timing was horrible. Glenn Youngkin was able to use it to his advantage, and that's how campaigns go.
And that's how they are won. David M. Drucker, author of In Trump's Shadow. Get you to Ohio if you have a 2-book contract, because that Ohio Senate race is really a book in itself. It really is. Don't go anywhere, America. Hour number 2 of the Hugh Hewitt Show straight ahead. I still haven't gotten through the rundown. I'll do it in the next hour.
Portions of the Hugh Hewitt Show are brought to you by Alliance Defending Freedom.
Trending now on the Larry Elder Show.
Now, regarding calling ivermectin a dewormer, Joe Rogan has, I think, the most popular podcast in the country. And Dr. Sanjay Gupta of CNN was on. Rogan, like Dennis, contracted the coronavirus. Rogan, like Dennis, had never been vaccinated. And Rogan, like Dennis, had taken ivermectin. And Rogan was not happy that when CNN learned that Rogan, was taking ivermectin, they referred to it as a dewormer. Here's what happened.
Horse dewormer's not a flattering thing. I get that.
It's a lie. It's a lie on a news network, and it's a lie that's a willing. That's a lie that they're conscious of. It's not a mistake.
Yeah,
they're unfavorably framing it as veterinary medicine.
Well, the FDA put this thing out. You saw that. Did you see that thing that the FDA put out?
What did the FDA put out?
It was a tweet, and it was snarky. I admit it. They said, "You are not a horse, you are not a cow. Stop taking this stuff," or something like that.
Why would you say that when you're talking about a drug that's been given out to billions and billions of people, a drug that was responsible for one of the inventors of it making the Nobel Prize in 2015?
Yeah.
A drug that has been shown to stop viral replication in vitro. You know that, right? Why would they lie and say that's horse dewormer? I can afford people medicine, mother. This is ridiculous. It's just a lie.
I don't think anyone is.
But don't you think that a lie like that is dangerous on a news network when you know that they know they're lying? You know that they know that I took medicine. Like, here it is. This is ivermectin.
You got it
right
with you.
here. Somebody gave it to me.
All right, hang on. The thing is, we're like going so fast. Like, I feel like I'm missing.
Keep up with what's trending. Subscribe on YouTube and at rumble.com.
The most powerful organs of the state are not merely corrupt, but that they've been weaponized.
We are now all rooting for his success.
That's not what happened. It was a complete ambush.
I thought it's early enough. Let's just send a couple guys over.
And the audience was, ha, 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 ha. How funny to set up an innocent man.
It divided the country in ways that people can't imagine. It's inspired massive violence.
Look for Salem Now in the App Store or go to salemnow.com.
Trending now on the Mike Gallagher Show.
And I'm intrigued. I shared with you a story of a reporter calling me, wanting to interview me about the role of talk radio and how we hosts influence our audiences. And he immediately launched in with this crap. Oh, what do you think about your friend Dennis Prager trying to kill people? Trying to kill people. Now, what do we do about it? Do we hide and tuck ourselves in bed and never leave the house? Or do we live our life and live with the virus? The virus doesn't appear to be planning to be eradicated anytime soon.
Keep up with what's trending. Subscribe on YouTube and at rumble.com. Trending now on America First with Sebastian Gorka.
Because frankly, sir, it appears that President Biden's message to one and all is that the U.S. has no limits to whom can come because the administration will not enforce any of its immigration laws. Is that the message this country will not enforce its immigration laws? And I will let you respond, sir.
No, it is not. And the president could not have been clearer in his articulation of this administration's position, nor could I have been clearer and continued to be so, which is the border is closed.
The border is closed, according to the man who runs the Department of Homeland Security for the senile old geezer in the White House, who sadly bears the title President of the United States. I think I have somebody in studio who begs to differ. We are one-on-one with none other than that truth teller extraordinaire, former director of ICE, Tom Homan. Welcome here on America First.
Thanks for having me, Seth. Appreciate it.
So you were there for how many years? 30 what?
34 and a half, almost 35.
34 and a half years serving this nation in numerous facilities, securing the border. Is the border closed like Secretary Mayorkas just said in front of Congress?
Absolutely not. And they need to take action. Look, he's under oath. I don't know how he's going to say the border's closed. We all seen the videotape. Look, 600,000 illegal aliens have been released into the country by CBP. 600,000 releases. And that's not counting who ICE is releasing at the order of political appointees from the DHS.
Keep up with what's trending. Subscribe today at rumble.com.
His most amazing discoveries thought to be written in a lost journal. Now, in the right hands, it could revolutionize the 21st century, but in the wrong hands,
If you can stop an earthquake, doesn't that mean you could start one too?
that's why that notebook should never fall into the wrong hands.
There's an old brown battered notebook in my office at work. You have to find it, take it, and keep it hidden at all costs. The G20 leaders meeting downtown, they're in danger. In fact, the whole of downtown could be in danger.
If we are to build a superhuman, we must first eliminate those who are flawed.
People are created equally. All of downtown, the high-rises were built on rollers to withstand horizontal shakes. A vertical quake this size could collapse half of downtown.
We have commenced the countdown.
Shall we stop this thing?
Save the universe!
Trending now on the Charlie Kirk Show.
The Public Health Department says the In-N-Out burger at Fisherman's Wharf disregarded repeated warnings to follow the rules. In-N-Out fired back and said they refuse to be the vaccination police for any government. So the department shut down the location last Thursday. It has since reopened, but without indoor dining.
It is really hard to believe why Americans are putting up with this. I know a lot of you are not. San Francisco only plays further into this kind of theme of what do I have in common with someone in San Francisco? Very little. The people in San Francisco are perfectly fine with the sexual anarchy happening on the streets of San Francisco. And yes, I said that again, media matters for you that watch our show. In fact, we're going to have David Engelhardt on our show eventually at some point to go through that because he actually coined that term. In San Francisco, total and complete chaos. You can defecate on the streets. You can do whatever drug you want to do. And yet, the tyranny part of it, and this is the kind of the blend of the anarcho-tyranny, where it's complete anarchy if you decide to disrupt societal norms. It's anarchy in the sense that if you want to break apart customs and traditions that predated you, but it's tyranny if you do not follow the rules of do you have the right papers. And now remember, this is a very interesting point. Remember, first it was the mask mandates. Then it was the social distancing mandates. Then it was your employees need to be vaccinated. Now it's your customers need to be vaccinated, but it's more than that. It's that you must enforce it. It's that if you do not hire people that work for you at In-N-Out that are checking the vaccination papers as they walk in, they will now shut down your business.
Keep up with what's trending. Subscribe on YouTube and at rumble.com.
Morning, glory, America. Bonjour, hi, Canada. I'm Hugh Hewitt inside the Beltway. This morning with Senator Joni Ernst of the great state of Iowa. Good morning, Senator Ernst. How are you? Oops. Not hearing her. Hello there.
Hello.
Hey, how are you, Senator? Good to
Hey.
talk to you.
Good to be on with you.
Thank you. I want to begin by asking you about the headlines this morning that Democrats are attempting to write both a billionaire's tax language and an amnesty proposal into legislation that you haven't seen, I assume.
No.
What could go wrong, Senator?
Oh, heavens, what could go wrong? Absolutely everything could go wrong. And we have been discussing some of these proposals that the Democrats are coming up with. And, of course, you are absolutely correct. We haven't seen anything in writing, which is very typical around this place. But what they're proposing is, the billionaires could be taxed on what's called unrealized capital gains on their liquid assets, meaning, wealthy billionaires, they would be taxed on things like stocks or other assets like real estate, where they actually haven't seen any money yet. It's unrealized. Well, how do you do that? And what happens if you lose money in your stock portfolio? Does the government give you money back? It's a crazy scheme, and I guess we'll just have to have IRS agents living with billionaires so they can figure all this stuff out.
What I'm most worried about, Senator, is they shoot for billionaires and they hit millionaires. And by that I mean there are people who own a lot of land, especially in your state, who are farmers, who are land rich and income poor. I also understand that there are some, cash poor. There are some people who are going to be billed on income, which is a terrible way to tax people on income, because income doesn't mean anything unless you know how much the expense ratio is. But mostly, I can't believe trying to rewrite the American tax code in secret. They need the wisdom of the crowd here. They need a lot of people to look at this. And you're a senator. You haven't seen it yet?
No, of course not, Hugh. Don't be silly. Yeah, this is important, and I hope people understand this, as so many bills that are being proposed right now add substantial cost to the American taxpayer and radical change from the way we do business across the United States is all being done in secret. It's not going through the typical committee process, subcommittee process. Is not being presented in written form so that people can scrutinize it, provide input. What they're doing is negotiating behind closed doors. We see that going on down at the White House and with Chuck Schumer and Nancy Pelosi. And again, this is a radical shift from the way we do business here in the United States. And it's not just the cost of the proposals they're putting forward, but it is the changes in policy which lead to socialism with a radical expansion of welfare programs.
And I also see the attempt by Senator Durbin, your neighbor to the east, to try and write in an immigration amnesty. And Senator Cotton has been warning about this. I never really thought it was true, but it's reported today. They're trying to, even though the parliamentarian has told both sides of the aisle, you can't do this in reconciliation. They're not giving up, and you can't see it, so you can't raise an alarm.
No, and again, all the negotiation in secret, and policy is not supposed to be wrapped up in this. It does have to be related to the budget. However, we see they're desperately trying to tie various pieces of immigration legislation into this bill. Now, we'll have to see what the text is, but we do believe it won't fit into reconciliation, but that doesn't stop the Democrats. So they're going to try to pull whatever they can into this massive tax and spend bill and again, radically change the way we do business across the United States.
What I really think is crazy, Senator, I love your comment on this, is that they say they are rushing to a deadline imposed by Joe Biden before he leaves to Glasgow, Scotland for the climate summit. Think about that. He's going to get on Air Force One and fly 4 hours. And that is a deadline to go to a summit at which he will barely participate in, at which no binding commitments will emerge. And we need to write the tax code and respond. It doesn't make any sense. It's an artificial deadline to try and get, your colleague Joe Manchin to shut up and sit down and try and get your colleague Kirsten Sinema to shut up and sit down. It's artificial.
It is artificial, and we see this time and time again where they set deadlines that have absolutely no meaning, and they rush through different pieces of legislation. So we see this once again with an artificial deadline of the end of this week. So here we are. We haven't seen any legislation. We're waiting on the House to act. And, meanwhile, we're working on low-level nominees in the administration here in the Senate, doing the confirmation process and voting on these nominees on the floor, when we have other really important pieces of legislation that need to get done, like our National Defense Authorization Act. That should be on the floor right now. We should be debating that, doing amendments to it, going through the regular process, and yet they keep putting that off. That is one of the singular things that the federal government should be doing right now.
I also appreciate your efforts to keep a spotlight on the 363 American citizens and legal permanent residents abandoned in Afghanistan. You've met with John Androzek. You're talking about Afghan veterans. I really appreciate that effort, Senator. Now I want to ask you about Facebook. There is a new Wall Street Journal story this morning about Facebook attempt to hire a prominent Democratic lobbyist. That's the headline. Facebook encounters challenge in bid to hire a prominent Democratic lobbyist. And they're going to pay this individual $2.5 million, and they're supposed to help Facebook out of their problems in D.C. And they've mentioned Valerie Jarrett and other people. Nobody wants this job. I can understand why. What is you're a senator. I mean, they're shooting at you, a supermajority senator. What do you want in a lobbyist to be a good lobbyist? Because I know Mark a little bit. I've had dinner with him a couple of times, and I wouldn't presume to tell him who to hire, but I know that if you hire Valerie Jarrett, don't even expect anyone to talk to her.
Right. I think what they should be doing is finding somebody that is absolutely nonpartisan, somebody that walks that line of finding solutions and not gunning for the other party, trying to squeak by assisting one party or the other. Facebook is in some real trouble right now, and they have a lot of questions directed at them that they have not been able to answer. And so this is a tough situation that they are in, and again, it needs to be somebody absolutely nonpartisan. They have struggled with answering why they only target conservative thought on their platform, not questioning thoughts coming from the other side. I think they need to relook who they're hiring and at what cost.
And now I also believe they're getting hammered by the left for not doing enough to prevent the transmission of damaging information from both sides. They're in a pickle, and that's an old saying, but it's true. They're in a pickle.
They are in a pickle, and if you also go out and scrutinize not just what's going on here in the United States, but what they have allowed to happen in other countries with the promotion of religious hatred. There is so much wrong with Facebook right now. They have dug a hole. They need to throw out the shovel.
So let me talk to you about the kind of people you enjoy talking to and your staff enjoys talking to. I'm not a lobbyist, and those times that I've been involved in trying to talk to members of Congress, they usually talk to me because I don't ask for anything for myself. And I'm curious, what do you welcome into your office? Who do you like to engage with on matters of policy that is lobbying you? And that lobbying goes on every day. It's fine. People want to have their views understood. Facebook wants their view to be understood. But who do you as a senator like to see in your office?
Well, it's number one, it's always Iowans, and they're regular people. And that's, I think, what a lot of folks fail to understand is, we welcome folks into our offices. And Iowans come out nearly every day. I have a group of Iowans in my office, and they are lobbying me on different issues. And this is the brilliant thing, and what I love is that we have regular people whose lives have been impacted by policy decisions. So they understand those policies, and they understand how to make those policies better. So they come in, they're always very well informed, they've studied the issue, they know the pros and cons, and they're able to present that to me. And so I think, in a situation like Facebook, they need to hear from real people. And it doesn't matter what side of the aisle they're on. They need to hear from real people and have people that will reflect the overall views of the United States.
That sounds like a 50-state strategy, to find voices from both sides of the aisle in all 50 states and have them work. Is that what works? Okay, the music, they took her off.
That would work.
Okay, good. Thank you, Senator. I'll talk to you soon. Senator Joni Ernst from Iowa. Don't go anywhere, America. I'm Hugh Hewitt.
Portions of the Hugh Hewitt Show are brought to you by Alliance Defending Freedom.
Trending now on the Eric Metaxas Show.
By him, so you're at the top of your game in every way, and then you dare to write something that you weren't even dreaming of putting this in anybody's face. This was a private thing you did to share your faith, and somebody who's obviously a troublemaker decides, we're going to make an example of you. We don't like you daring to imply that heterosexuality is normative or that the Bible needs to be taken seriously. We're going to make an example of you. And even though you'd been in the department for, you said 34 years?
Well, a total of 34 years in the fire service as a whole. But I served a total of 7 years as fire chief in the city of Atlanta.
An amazing career, celebrated by the President of the United States, and then some radical comes after you and decides to make your life hell. But you had a little secret weapon called faith in Jesus. And that's what you write about in this book, isn't it?
That's exactly what I wrote about. And to be clear, Eric, the phrase America's fire chief comes from the fact that President Barack Obama appointed me to be the head of the United States Fire Administration. And so when I returned to Atlanta after serving at the United States Fire Administration, that's when God put it on my heart to write this book to encourage Christian men. And as a result of that, the council member complained about it. The mayor fired me. But thanks be to God for Alliance Defending Freedom, who came alongside me and walked me through that 4-year legal journey.
Keep up with what's trending. Subscribe today at rumble.com.
Streaming on Salem Now.
This is a story of how 1 million children were placed with local foster families through an unlikely alliance between the Chinese government and a British footballer. Parents from all walks of life share their stories of overcoming the one-child policy by taking in orphans. With unprecedented access across the country, this is a unique insight into the lives of the 90s orphans now driving the 21st century's fastest growing economy. This story needs to be told across the world. At a time where there's so much negativity and cynicism, here's proof that a single leap of faith can change the world.
Look for Salem Now in the App Store or go to salemnow.com.
Trending now on the Dennis Prager Show.
If that wasn't clear yesterday, let it be clear today. Why did people hug me? Right? The same question could be asked of the thousands of people who put their arms around me in the course of the last year in posing for pictures. They understood the risk that they were taking, and they thought that it was a minimal risk, which it turns out to have been. So while people that I know lived in their house for over a year and never left, I was hugging people. That is correct. That was the decision to choose life. You have a choice in life, to choose to live or to choose to be scared. And I chose all year and a half, now almost 2 years, to live life. I think it was the correct choice. A lot of people found it to be an admirable choice. But this is what they cover. Prager listed off a cocktail of therapeutics he said had been taken over the course of the pandemic, many of which have not been approved by the FDA. Yes. See, this is what constitutes truth for the Washington Post.
Keep up with what's trending. Subscribe on YouTube and at rumble.com. Trending now.
Welcome back, America. I'm Hugh Hewitt. Facebook had good earnings, so they're probably going to have a good day on the market today. This report is brought to you by AndrewandTodd.com, the financial report. AndrewandTodd.com with Sierra Pacific Mortgage, 888-888-1172. The 10-year Treasury has gone up to 1.66%. It's inching higher every day. That means the cost of the home, which have already gone up in real terms. You heard Larry Summers talking about that in the first hour in the clip I played from CNBC. The real cost of housing is going up every day, and the cost of your getting a low mortgage remains about the same with AndrewandTodd.com, but you can't sleep on it. You cannot sleep on it. 888-888-1172. If you're going to refinance, if you're going to buy a home, you need to get pre-qualified. You need to lock in your rate. You need to talk to the pros at AndrewandTodd.com. They are lenders at AndrewandTodd.com. And if you call them at 888-888-1172, they'll explain how to refinance, get those low rates, buy a house, buy an investment property, buy a vacation home, get into real estate for the inflationary years ahead of us, and get in at a 30-year fixed rate that is lower than you could ever have imagined even 5 years ago. 888-888-1172. Back to the Facebook problem. The Facebook papers and their fallout. New York Times says, here are the big takeaways from the big whistleblower. The leaked documents reveal internal struggles, says the New York Times. And the leaked document shows that the challenges are global. India is one place where they are truly on the rack. But the Washington Post picks up on the same thing. Key takeaways, same language, key takeaways. A personal decision by Facebook CEO Mark Zuckerberg leads to a crackdown on dissent in Vietnam. Measures to suppress hateful, deceptive content are lifted after the American presidential election, as pro-Trump groups disputing the legitimacy of the election experienced meteoric growth. A dummy test account on Facebook in India is flooded with violent anti-Muslim propaganda. A trove of internal Facebook documents reveals that the social media giant has privately and meticulously tracked real-world harms exacerbated by its platforms, ignored warnings from its employees about the risks of design decisions, and exposed vulnerable communities around the world to a cocktail of dangerous content. Here are the key takeaways, according to the Washington Post. Mark Zuckerberg's public claims often conflict with internal research. Facebook dropped its guard before the January 6th insurrection. Facebook fails to effectively police content in much of the world. Facebook under fire. Facebook chooses maximum engagement over user safety. Okay, it just gets worse. Then, they got better sales growth, but the Apple privacy policy, which they've had to adopt to be on the Apple iTunes and iPad store, has greatly decelerated that sales growth. All this comes up to a myriad of problems which are arriving on Washington shore, all in a piece. And that piece spells trouble for Facebook. So they're trying to hire a super lobbyist. And as you just heard Senator Joni Ernst tell me live on the Hugh Hewitt show, that won't work. You can't send a Democrat to talk to Republicans about how to protect Mark Zuckerberg. Somehow, Zuckerberg's lieutenants crashed the brand inside of the Republican Party in less than a year. It was a pretty good brand, thought it was okay, thought it was fair. Then they talked him into the get out the vote, the Zuckerberg boxes. Then they talked him in to dropping different people. Then they talked him, I like I've told Senator Ernst, I've met Mark Zuckerberg twice. I think he's an incredibly smart guy. He reminds me of fighter pilots that I know in the way that he is kind of data-driven and intake-oriented. Listen, care, pause, respond. And the data he's been given about how to act in D.C. is terrible, and it's old. It's based on George W. Bush years. The whole world has changed since Joel Kaplan left the Bush administration. The whole world has changed since President Obama left and all the Obama people. Nick Clegg has no more idea about what to do in D.C. than the man on the moon. Let me also tell you that Israeli helicopters yesterday struck Hezbollah-linked targets in southern Lebanon, and in the Times of Israel, Israeli Air Force to start training for strike on Iran nuke program in coming months. The Israelis are just telegraphing to everyone. They're going to go in and they're going to blow up Iran. We're going to be on the precipice. Meanwhile, the Wall Street Journal has a story. Does Taiwan's military stand a chance against China? Few think so. Huh? What? And all of a sudden, Joe Biden is saying we will defend Taiwan, and then we're reporting that we can't do it? This is what I'm going to talk with Admiral James Stavridis about right after the break. Stay tuned, America. I'm Hugh Hewitt.
Hey, listener feedback time. You know who the standout culture warriors are this year, and we need you to nominate them in Salem's annual Culture Warrior of the Year Awards. Go to HughHewitt.com, click on the banner, and nominate your Culture Warrior of the Year. Nominations are open through 11:59 p.m. Pacific, October 30th.
Trending now on The Larry Elder Show.
Want to talk about on Spectrum One, which I get. I get Spectrum One, and on the morning, there'll be somebody about somebody from LA who's been an artist, somebody from LA who's a writer, somebody from LA who's a dancer, somebody from LA who's a filmmaker, but you've never, ever, ever interviewed me for any of my stuff, ever. It is completely unfair. I know you don't like my politics. I don't like high taxes. I don't like high regulation. I want secure borders, all of which you guys are opposed to. You supported, for example, Proposition 16, for crying out loud, to use race again as a factor for college admissions and for hiring and for contracting. And when the voters in 1996, I think it was, voted against that, you guys wanted to restore it. I think it's a racist agenda, a racist bill, and yet you supported that. So calling me the black face of white supremacy, calling me all but a David Duke, that's the premise here. So I hope this doesn't degenerate into a witch hunt. I hope this really is a friendly or a fair interview with the two of you. But I have my suspicions.
Okay. Well, I'm glad you got that. We're able to get that off your chest. And I understand that you're not happy with the LA Times coverage.
Well, are you happy with my being called the black face of white supremacy, Jim? Is that okay with you?
I'm not really here to comment on our last 30 years of coverage of you or our recent.
No, I'm talking about the last week.
Yeah, I'm not really here to represent. That's a column by one of our colleagues, and I'm.
What do you think of me being called the black face of white?
And of course, he would not give any opinion. By the way, a number of reporters off the record approached me and said they were embarrassed by the fact that I was called the black face of white supremacy. I said, why are we talking about it off the record?
Keep up with what's trending. Subscribe on YouTube and at rumble.com.
The most powerful organs of the state are not merely corrupt, but that they've been weaponized to go after perceived domestic enemies. And that's very scary.
Our constitutional democracy enshrines the peaceful transfer of power.
We are now all rooting for his success. The peaceful transition of power is one of the hallmarks of our democracy.
We don't live in the United States of America as is any of us would like to understand it.
We have a peaceful transition of power process. That's not what happened.
They interviewed General Flynn, and they did it in what was a complete ambush.
I thought it's early enough. Let's just send a couple guys over.
And the audience was, ha, 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 ha. How funny to set up an innocent man.
This is what third world security states do. They spy on their political opponents like this.
This is part of a concerted Russian influence operation.
Russian interference.
They colluded. They were in on it.
He would constantly say, I have seen evidence of collusion.
Until this is released, I can't comment. I can't go into the particulars.
Russians, I'm not going to be specific as. But he knew he could just say it on TV and then hide behind, well, it's all classified, I can't get into it.
Well, it's classified. You can't see it.
Collusion. You just got to be willing to see it.
New York's Daily News ran this front page, Trump is Hitler.
How could 62 million Americans vote for Hitler? Are 62 million Americans Nazis?
We really almost thought it was a joke. Like, really, you're not going to accept that you lost this election?
Then they see the Russia collusion narrative sitting right there in front of them and say, why don't we just say that he cheated?
It divided the country in ways that people can't imagine. It's inspired massive violence. It's given people who are bad faith actors a license to do whatever they want because they literally feel like they're fighting Russian spies and Nazis.
Russiagate has been the most egregious abuse of everything that was supposed to have been good about our government.
The thing that they were investigating the Trump campaign for is what they themselves were doing.
Trending now on The Mike Gallagher Show.
A new Quinnipiac poll is out, shows Biden's favorability has dropped below that of Donald Trump. Among registered voters, 40% have a favorable view of Joe Biden. 41% have a favorable view of Donald Trump. 51% of those surveyed say the country is worse off now than it was a year ago. Now, Biden's favorability has declined from his high watermark. He was up to 54% in February. I don't know about you, but 54% to 40%, it's plunged 14 points in a matter of months. And you know Donald Trump is at Mar-a-Lago or wherever he is these days. And
keep up with what's trending. Subscribe on YouTube and at rumble.com.
Welcome back, America. I'm Hugh Hewitt. That music means Admiral James Stavridis is in the house. Good morning, Admiral. How are you?
Doing great, Hugh. How you doing?
I'm terrific. Washington Post this morning, 5 a.m., Dan Lamothe. In Taiwan war game, few good options for U.S. to deter China. The Center for a New American Strategy ran a war game involving the Dangshu Island. I'm probably mispronouncing that. Didn't go well. It didn't go well, and in fact, they're even worried about bigger scenarios than that. I'm not surprised. Are you surprised, Admiral?
No, I'm not. I've participated in several of those war games over the years. U.S. Indo-Pacific Command runs those on a regular basis, and they're increasingly reflecting the reality that China has many more ships, much more capability in their aircraft, longer land-based ballistic and tactical missiles. That's been on the upswing for a decade and more, and it's starting to really bleed into the results of these war games in a negative way.
In the end, the article says the best advice is that warn the Chinese ahead of time of the consequences they would face if they moved on any of the islands, including Taiwan, with Japan playing a significant role. Haven't we already done that? Didn't President Biden sort of accidentally do that in the town hall last week where he said we would defend Taiwan?
Well, he certainly said that we would defend Taiwan, and we have a commitment to do so. But then within 24 hours, you saw both the White House spokesperson, Jen Psaki, and the Pentagon and Secretary of Defense Lloyd Austin kind of return to this former policy. It's called strategic ambiguity of not telling China exactly what we're going to do. The truth is probably somewhere in the middle. My own view is that, A, we should, in fact, assist Taiwan aggressively if they are attacked. And B, it's time to tell China that we are going to do that. And I think there's a growing sense of that in the public conversation about this.
I think they may have overplayed many hands, Admiral. I want to talk to you specifically about Enes Kanter, the Boston Celtics center. Now, I'm no Celtics fan, but I'm applauding Center Kanter, who called out Nike, LeBron James, and General Secretary Xi in a 3-minute audio, which I played earlier, video audio, which I played the audio of earlier. And, of course, the NBA is trembling. What do you advise the NBA, or what would you advise the NBA to do when they've got players who are out there doing the right thing, demanding human rights for Uyghurs and the end of forced labor, but a vast market that's about to close to them?
The NBA has got to stand behind free speech in the end. They're an American entity. They are responsible to stand for American values, and therefore the NBA cannot be put in a position of disciplining its players for speaking their mind.
Okay, that is what I agree. I think they've got to just step back and say nothing, and if China takes them off the air, General Secretary Xi will simply deprive his people of basketball, and that's his problem. Now, Admiral, let me talk to you about Facebook. Facebook has international problems of the sort. As chairman of the Rockefeller Foundation, you survey every single day, and as an admiral of the ocean-going sea, you used to serve for years and years and years about. They are trying to hire someone to persuade both sides of Congress. Senator Ernst just said, hire a nonpartisan person. When you were at the Pentagon, either staff secretary or executive secretary to Donald Rumsfeld, or when you were running Southern Command or NATO, who would you listen to from the defense community that was in to lobby you? Would you listen to big names from the Republican or Democratic side, or would you look for experts?
We always look for experts, and I think that's true as a general proposition. We want not only an apolitical military, but we want a group of advisors who are not tied specifically to domestic politics. You want to hear from people who have spent their lives thinking about the international world, and they exist on both sides of the spectrum. Look at someone like your friend and someone I know, Robert O'Brien, former national security advisor in the Trump administration. Before him, H.R. McMaster served in that role, obviously a military background. But on the Democratic side, look at someone like Kurt Campbell, who is in the White House today, overall in charge of Asia policy. He is smart, switched on. He's a Democrat, but he is all about thinking about the international side of the house. So you need experts who are deeply read in their area. And the penultimate example would be Henry Kissinger, for example, who are just so deep into the issues and ideas they kind of transcend the politics. That's who you want advising you.
Well, my last example would be you, since you gave penultimate example being Kissinger. But I'm curious about military men and women when they come out. Do any of them go into lobbying? I know many of them go to work for defense firms, but that's a little bit different than what I'm talking about. Do any of them go into the lobbying business?
No, I don't. I imagine you could scare up an example or two, Hugh, but the senior military I know, when they retire, they're willing to serve on corporate boards, for example, and give internal advice to corporations. They're certainly willing to do commentary in a public way, like I'm doing right now, sharing their expertise and ideas. They're willing to take on leadership roles, running everything from universities to businesses that have nothing to do with defense. And yes, they go to work for defense companies, but in those roles, they're doing leadership, internal advising, geopolitics. I'm unaware of any senior military who functions as a lobbyist.
You see, I think that's unfortunate because if they were selective about their clients, they could be very powerful advocates because of their expertise. I am curious if you think a military person would fit well in this super Facebook senior vice president level that they're looking for in D.C. because Facebook's got international issues. I mean, they've got revolution that they're cooking up in Kashmir. I've never been to Kashmir. Have you been to Kashmir, Admiral?
I have flown over parts of Kashmir.
Okay, you're closer than I'm ever going to get. And so the Facebook controversy is that they are fueling Kashmiri terrorism and Kashmiri resistance and Indian violence and they need someone with a world view, right?
I think that's fine, but I draw a distinction there between that and, if you will, classic lobbying, where the word comes from, hanging out in the lobby of a senator or a congressperson. I think this is more about giving advice, giving public commentary. I could see a senior military in that role being quite effective, yes.
Yeah, that's what I believe, is that Joni Ernst said, I don't want anyone who's identified with politics. You said, I don't want anyone who's identified with politics. Well, the only way to do that is to find the apolitical branch, which is the military. Now, I am a little bit alarmed. I just moderated a debate in Ohio where a number of the candidates took shots at the chairman of the Joint Chiefs, General Miley. And my friend, as you mentioned, Ambassador O'Brien, tells me he's a wonderful man. He's done great service and is a warrior. I've read his record. How did that happen? How did this happen that we've begun to take shots at our senior military leadership? That has never happened, in my knowledge, in the United States before.
it's another reflection of the extreme polarization of the country. And those shots are, frankly, coming from both sides of the aisle, not just against Mark Milley, who I know extremely well. He worked for me on several occasions and is absolutely a stand-up officer. What we need to do here is take a step back from this kind of vitriol that flows on both sides and recognize that someone like Mark Milley has a tough job working across party lines in the current moment and a tough job staying in the same job under two very different presidents. I think he's handled it reasonably well with some very difficult scenarios that he's had to deal with. But when you see people going after someone like that, it makes you worry. And frankly, Hugh, as we both know, it's part of the debate, unfortunately, about COVID today. Here we have a life-saving vaccine that's widely available, completely free, and yet a lot of people are choosing not to take it because they're getting misinformation. And that's really unfortunate. It's another example of polarization in politics bleeding into areas they shouldn't get into.
Let me talk to you about that and close there, Admiral. The New York Times today reports that the FDA advisory panels were afraid of issuing complicated advice because they would further confuse the public, indicating an underlying problem as to the public's certainty about the efficacy of CDC and FDA guidance. They have somehow, over a year and a half of this virus, crushed CDC and FDA credibility. And I don't think I would have ever imagined that the CDC would lose America's trust, but it has. What do you do? I mean, it's just a given. I like Tony Fauci. I like Francis Collins. They've been guests on this show. I respect both of them. Great-souled men. But there is obviously a disconnect between public health and the public. How do you build the bridge again? What do you do?
Well, one place to start would be where our conversation was a moment ago, which is the social networks. And it's not just Facebook. It's Facebook, Twitter, Google search algorithms, the way people jump onto Instagram, TikTok. All of these are massive influencers of the public. And we don't want to get out and deeply regulate them, but we do want to establish guardrails about patent untruths that are flying around in those circuits. That's a pretty good place to start. Number two is we need our elected leaders to stand behind people of quality who are in apolitical roles. Mark Milley, Anthony Fauci, and not allow them to become political footballs. So I think it's, as usual, it's leadership and in the social networks and sides. It's also technology that can help you. And these are difficult, big conversations for the nation, but we have lost our way here in both the instances we've talked about. We need to get our way back to the center.
I would add, once it's broken, you've got to recognize that it's broken and find new people. And I don't know where this is an increasingly complicated situation, and I really don't know how a search committee for credibility goes about its business, but the American public needs that, right? That's the bottom line.
That's absolutely right. And so a fundamental point to be made here, by the way, Hugh, is all the people we've talked about are servants of the nation. And if you're someone who has labored hard for relatively little amounts of money and you've worked through your life doing that, that ought to be celebrated more, not criticized. And I think that's an important function here, is celebrating those who have served the nation, not just in uniform. There are a lot of ways to serve this country.
I agree with that, and it's always good to talk to you, Admiral, as you have served this country for so many years. Appreciate the conversation. Admiral James Stavridis, retired United States Navy, former head of Southern Command, former Supreme Allied Commander of NATO. If Mark Zuckerberg had to throw $100 million at him, I would hire Admiral Stavridis to fix his problem, because he might be the only person left. I really don't know who's left. I mean, I cover many Democrats, trust me, and most Republicans, but I don't know who actually gets 75% of the country to listen to them anymore. I don't know that such a person exists as they're looking for. They may have to go with the 50-state strategy. In any event, bad situation for there. Meanwhile, Dwayne is in the news. A man fraudulently received COVID relief funds. Then he spent $57,000 on a Pokemon card. Now, there's no name in here, but Dwayne, do you do Pokemon? Never mind. I got to do ReliefFactor.com. ReliefFactor.com I took it this morning in the first hour. I remind you in hours 2 and 3. My neck feels a lot better this morning than it did yesterday. Not 100% back yet. Hotel pillows, the bane on anyone who spends as much time crouched over a screen as I do. You just can't sleep on them. But ReliefFactor.com helps you get your way back. They are the natural anti-inflammatories. Now that I'm reading Ras Douthat's book, In the Deep Places. His new book is called The Deep Places. It's about chronic pain. He suffered from Lyme disease, and we'll talk with him about it tomorrow. The Deep Places is about what do you do with pain. One thing is you try everything. So if you're a chronic pain sufferer, just try ReliefFactor.com for 3 weeks, $19.95. It doesn't work, that's fine. But maybe it will. I'll be right back, America. It's the Hugh Hewitt Show.
Portions of the Hugh Hewitt Show are brought to you by Alliance Defending Freedom.
Trending now on the Eric Metaxas Show.
Him, so you're at the top of your game in every way, and then you dare to write something that you weren't even dreaming of putting this in anybody's face. This was a private thing you did to share your faith, and somebody who's obviously a troublemaker decides, we're going to make an example of you. We don't like you daring to imply that heterosexuality is normative or that the Bible needs to be taken seriously. We're going to make an example of you. And even though you'd been in the department for, you said 34 years?
Well, a total of 34 years in the fire service as a whole, but I served a total of 7 years as fire chief in the city of Atlanta.
An amazing career, celebrated by the President of the United States, and then some radical comes after you and decides to make your life hell. But you had a little secret weapon called faith in Jesus. And that's what you write about in this book, isn't it?
That's exactly what I wrote about. And to be clear, Eric, the phrase America's fire chief comes from the fact that President Barack Obama appointed me to be the head of the United States Fire Administration. And so when I returned to Atlanta after serving at the United States Fire Administration, that's when God put it on my heart to write this book to encourage Christian men. And as a result of that, the council member complained about it. The mayor fired me. But thanks be to God for Alliance Defending Freedom, who came alongside me and walked me through that 4-year legal journey.
Keep up with what's trending. Subscribe today at rumble.com.
Streaming on Salem Now.
The most powerful organs of the state are not merely corrupt, but that they've been weaponized.
We are now all rooting for his success.
That's not what happened.
It was a complete ambush.
I thought it's early enough. Let's just send a couple guys over.
And the audience was, ha, 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 ha. How funny to set up an innocent man.
This is what third world security states do. They spy on their political opponents like this.
This is part of a concerted Russian influence operation.
Russians, I'm not going to be specific as
He knew he could just say it on TV and then hide behind, well, it's all classified, I can't get into it.
It divided the country in ways that people can't imagine. It's inspired massive violence. It's given people who are bad faith actors a license to do whatever they want.
Look for Salem Now in the App Store or go to Salem.
I love this feeling. It picks you up every time you fall.
Every time I take one step forward.
When Wright came in this morning, he wants to fight you.
No one expected this out of him.
Look for Salem Now in the App Store or go to salemnow.com.
Welcome back, America. I'm Hugh Hewitt. My last week of asking you to support Alliance Defending Freedom in the year ahead. A huge year at the Supreme Court. Many challenges in front of them. What does it do across the country? Let's go out to Seattle. In Seattle, the Seattle Rescue Mission, working with the down and the out, the people who are at the bottom of the bottom, the lost and the least, and have been doing it for years, And the city of Seattle tells Scott Chin, who runs it, they've got to hire someone who does not believe in the gospel that animates the mission of Seattle's Union Rescue Mission. Here's Pastor Scott talking about Alliance Defending Freedom.
All I can say is I thank God for Alliance Defending Freedom. When the Washington State Supreme Court said the Constitution does not protect our ability to be able to hire people who share our beliefs, we needed help. We're a rescue mission. We have tight budgets. And so having a partner like ADF has really been an answer to prayer.
So I want you to please go over to HughHewitt.com. They work across the United States, from the Pacific Northwest to the tip of Florida. They are everywhere, from Maine to Southern California's border with Mexico. They have 75 lawyers on staff, 3,300 lawyers affiliated and not charging them. They don't turn down any clients with meritorious claims. They don't charge any clients. They need us, you and me, to send them $100 or more every year just to keep them in the field. You can do that at HughHewitt.com. The banner will load at the top, or you can call 866-359-9644, 866-359-9644. The budget reconciliation fiasco continues with the effort to suddenly rush in a new billionaires tax, which is bound to be riddled with contradictions and hit targets that they do not intend to hit and absolutely devastate higher-end economy. And people know how to tax avoid at that level. They will simply go offshore. It's a disaster. Aligned with that disaster, revealed this morning a secret attempt to put amnesty into that. I'll talk with Senator Cotton about it next hour. But let's go for a moment to Leader McConnell on the Senate floor yesterday. Cut number 15.
The biggest tax hikes in 50 years, the biggest peacetime tax hikes ever recorded in American history. That is what Washington Democrats are cooking up. Our Democratic colleagues and President Biden are behind closed doors dreaming up creative new ways to grab literally historic amounts of the American people's money. Remember, the same socialist spending plans that Democrats claim cost $0 somehow also need staggering new tax hikes to pay for them. So even with significant inflation, runaway gas prices, and runaway energy costs already hitting American families in their pocketbooks, Washington Democrats have spent months dreaming up new cash grabs with the IRS. Democrats
what the misery index is going to be by the time Kamala Harris runs for president, because Joe Biden can't run again. I mean, you watch Joe Biden. He's just a lame duck. This is part of the problem. He's a lame duck. He's a shuffling duck. And Kamala Harris is the likely nominee, and she's going to have to run against a misery index that has gone through the roof in just the first year of the Biden administration. Why? Because they just keep printing money. It's not that hard. As Brian Westbury says, when you print a third more money, just will it into being. It chases the same amount of productivity. Even when you have a good growth quarter, 10% growth quarter underway, even when you have a good growth quarter, if you increase the money supply by 33%, which is what the Fed has done through its magic money plans, that 33% money ends up in people's bank accounts, and they try and buy goods, and they bid up houses, and they bid up, Pokemon card going for $57,000. Now, that's an idiot, and it's a crook. But it reflects an underlying frenzy to acquire assets that will appreciate because inflation is here. I also have to tell you this story this morning from the Orange County Register. Rancho Cucamonga link to high-speed train to Las Vegas wins key state approvals. Now, for years, I've been on this show for 21 years nationally. Most of them spent in California. The first 16 of them spent in California. And we had the scam tram to nowhere. All right? There was originally a scam tram, the train to nowhere in Irvine, California, proposed by socialist Larry Agron. Then Jerry Brown got into office, and he spent billions on a train to nowhere. It stands like a Stonehenge in the Central Valley. They will never build it. It was a complete waste of money. It was a lobbyist dream. Lots of EIR monies, lots of consultants, not a mile of track. They bought runways to nowhere, right-of-ways to endless horizons that don't go anywhere. Now they want a high-speed rail from L.A. and Rancho Cucamonga over to Las Vegas. The idea being that they'll clear the I-5 of traffic. It isn't going to happen Because you can drive to Las Vegas in 4 hours, and then you will have your car in Las Vegas. Or you can drive to Rancho Cucamonga, leave your car, get on a high-speed rail that doesn't exist, travel 2 hours, and get a rental car or a taxi. It's insane. But this is what government does. It hires consultants and lobbyists. This is why your governments are broken. It's why education systems don't work. It's why, canary in the mine time, Youngstown State University is going to have to, it's an email I just got, they're going to have to cut $5 million in a very limited budget, maybe more. Jim Tressel, great Ohio State coach, now president of YSU, canary in the mine, Youngstown State is coming for its staff and its tenured people. It's going to happen everywhere as higher education realizes they just can't keep raising rates. Stay tuned, America. I'm Hugh Hewitt.
Now.
¿Cuánto queda?
No queda nada. Que lo siento mucho.
And that's the only time you can come to Christ, when the Spirit of God calls you to the cross. Don't you hesitate.
Have you ever thought of going to seminary?
Padre, ¿quién está listo para ser transformado por el poder de su palabra?
Look for Salem Now in the App Store or go to salemnow.com.
Trending now on the Dennis Prager Show.
As you know, I tested positive the same day that you did. Along with you, I was excited to get the natural immunity and had the therapeutics ready to go, and I'm feeling great and don't want to make light of this virus, but there are treatments available, and I'm so glad you're feeling better, and I'm feeling good, and I'm celebrating 7 days of natural immunity here. So,
yeah, the issue is not making light of. If anybody makes light of, it is the people who make light of the therapeutics. We're not making light of the virus. We take it seriously enough to have taken a whole regimen of therapeutics.
Keep up with what's trending. Subscribe on YouTube and at rumble.com. Trending now on the Larry Elder Show.
The idea that I am anti-vaccine, which is what I was accused of by one commercial that they ran on radio, is a lie. I've talked about people who are in high-risk categories, that they ought to, with the consultation of their doctors, very likely take a vaccine. I certainly did. But I also believe that we ought to pay attention to the science that suggests that people who have had the coronavirus and have developed antibodies might very well be at less risk than those who have been vaccinated.
Keep up with what's trending. Subscribe on YouTube and at rumble.com.
Schools are lining up to push the transgender agenda on kids and cut parents out of the equation.
How a million children were placed with local foster families. Parents from all walks of life share their stories of overcoming the one-child policy by taking in orphans.
Go to salemnow.com.
Trending now on the Mike Gallagher Show.
Yakima County, Washington. Listen to this deputy's sign-off. After 22 years on the streets of Yakima, Washington, serving the community, this guy has to lose his job because he won't get the mandatory vaccine.
This is my final sign-off after 22 years of serving the citizens of the state of Washington, being asked to leave because I am dirty. State 1034, this is the last time you'll hear me in a state patrol car. And Jay Ansley can kiss my
Thank you for your 22 years and 5 months of service to the citizens of Washington State. You've taken on many roles in your time with the patrol. In your first year, you delivered a baby while on patrol in Bremerton. You've been a DRE instructor, certified technical specialist, and reconstructionist, peer support member, part of the chaplaincy board, and a CVD trooper. You've been a great role model and mentor for all young troopers serving in the area by sharing your knowledge and experience throughout the years. Thank you for your service. 1906.
That's an absolute tragedy that this guy is losing his job after 22 years. And you heard all the things that he did while a state trooper. And he's got to lose his job over a medicine in his body? If that doesn't shake you, let me just ask you, are you okay with that guy getting fired? I like the way he signed off. We had to beep it, but he said, Jay Inslee, the governor of Washington, can kiss my rear end. And I think that's the attitude of more and more Americans.
Keep up with what's trending. Subscribe on YouTube and at rumble.com. Trending now on America First with Sebastian Gorka.
600,000 illegal aliens have been released into the country by CBP. 600,000 releases. And that's not counting who ICE is releasing at the order of political appointees with the DHS. So at least 600,000 releases. That can.
But, you know, this is Youngkin trying to stir up this critical race theory, which I'll be honest with you, Bill, I find highly offensive. Critical race theory is not taught in Virginia. It has never been taught. It is a racist dog whistle. And I'm really tired of it.
Across that border were released. Many with COVID, many with criminal histories. Add to that the 400,000, just short of 400,000 gotaways. Right there, that's a million.
Gotaways are ones who aren't processed or touched by DHS.
Are first of all, gotaways are people that didn't get arrested by border, so they came across the border legally and weren't apprehended. Why? Because you're tied up with these big groups. Like we talked about this many times. The cartels in Mexico send big groups in one area. They pose all the border patrol resources in that area. Then that's when they move their fentanyl and bad people.
Keep up with what's trending. Subscribe today at rumble.com.
Streaming on Salem Now.
The public would be outraged if they knew the truth.
Why do you think our politicians are not on the sidewalk right now talking to you?
Don't have no respect.
The old wall randomly turns into a guardrail, followed by miles of open border.
Human trafficking gone.
That journey is extremely dangerous.
The 7-year-old girl died in the desert.
From the country of India.
A great pillar of the community was killed by a man who had been deported at least twice.
This little urn contains the ashes of my son. His dreams cut short forever.
We're so worried about other countries' problems, and we don't even focus on our own.
Look for Salem Now in the App Store or go to salemnow.com.
Trending now on The Charlie Kirk Show.
We have people losing careers in multi-million-dollar jobs because they refuse to take the vaccine that does not 100% prevent you from getting the virus. Breakthrough cases, people with the vaccine who are vaccinated are dying, and yet they say we still need to destroy your life even if you have natural immunity, even if you have the antibodies. So one example in particular, there's two examples that highlight this, I think, rather well. The first is a place that all of you should go for lunch today, especially if you're listening on the West Coast. In-N-Out Burger. In-N-Out Burger is phenomenal. They are a wonderful company. They do a great job. The owners are Christians. And they deserve your support because now in San Francisco's only In-N-Out location, they've said, look, we are refusing to enforce the San Francisco vaccine mandate. We're not going to go ask people, show us your papers.
Keep up with what's trending. Subscribe on YouTube and at rumble.com.
Morning glory, America. Bonjour, hi, Canada. Hugh Hewitt inside the Beltway live on this Tuesday morning. Joined again, finally, by Robert Costa, back in his radio wheelhouse after authoring Peril with Bob Woodward. Good morning, Robert. How are you?
Hugh, it is great to be back with you.
Well, thank you. You've had a long book leave. You had a great bestseller. Peril is in bookstores everywhere. It continues to sell. It continues to make news. In fact, let's go back to the most recent headlines, Robert Costa, from Peril. What is the latest? It's really the John Eastman memo. And John's a friend of mine, and I've known him forever. He's a very fine lawyer. You put in the short form of the Eastman memo. Did you have the long form available to you?
Well, there are two versions of the Eastman memo. The Eastman memo that matters in our report in Peril is the one that goes to Senator Mike Lee of Utah that was circulated by the White House on January 2nd, 2021.
Did Eastman know it was going to go out from the White House? Because lawyers will often, I haven't talked to John yet, but they will often prepare talking point memos, summary memos that are not supposed to go A, to the client, or B, to the top of the client chain, and certainly not outside of the client's control.
Well, I'm not sure what Eastman knew about the circulation of his memo. I do know that John was in the Oval Office with Trump and Pence and Mark Short and Pence's advisors on January 4th, 2 days before the certification, pushing the argument. Eastman has made further comments about that meeting to the New York Times. In our book, which we stand by, President Trump was really telling Trump was really telling Pence, listen to John, you can do this, you can walk away, try to allow this to go to the House, delay the certification.
And so John Eastman has said that his longer memo makes clear that he did not favor this. And I'll talk to John sometime about this. But let me ask you about the impact of Peril. It certainly is going to make it less likely that lawyers will give their candid set of option advice on the far-flung to the near certain legal options to a president. Don't you think that's going to happen?
I think, Hugh, though, you got to when you read the memo says there are alternate electors in the states, and that just wasn't the case. And so that it was Eastman's memo says there's going to be a scenario where alternate slates of electors are available. Now, Eastman has publicly made the case that he wanted to delay the certification if Pence went in that direction. He's making the recommendation that alternate slates would somehow appear, but no state legislature had recognized any alternate slate at that time on January 4th, 5th, or 6th.
No, I think it was completely far-fetched. I do not believe it was an option. I would tell John that. I don't think he ought to have put that in paper because I know how the president thinks, which is I can talk Trump, which is give him an option that's far out there and he'll seize upon it as though it's mainstream and viable. And assuming, it's sort of like how does an economist get out of a hole in the ground? First you assume a ladder. Here they assumed an elector. And you can't. I mean, you just can't do that and give it to Donald Trump or he's going to assume the elector.
Exactly. I mean, I can't read John's mind or Trump's mind, but Trump wholesale bought in. I spent 9-10 months digging into this. Trump was wholesale believing that this election could go to the House and he could win, and that alternate slates of electors could somehow be brought quickly to the fore that would allow him to have a victory in the House. This is something he truly believed.
I agree, Robert. What I try and tell everyone is that the President Trump is first and foremost a real estate developer, and real estate developers see houses and buildings and malls. They don't see empty ground. They don't see zoning restrictions. They don't see state law. They don't see CEQA and NEPA and endangered species. They don't see anything except their vision. And if you tell them at one time it's possible we could get 5 units an acre, they'll want 6. I mean, that's just how developers think. That's why they get stuff done. It's also why they go bankrupt and then get things done. And it's Donald Trump. And if you give him a memo that says, maybe if electors show up from one state, we'll be able to have the vice president put that aside, he's going to will it into existence. Is that your experience with the president?
Well, I've had interviews with him, but I do know that the story we've reported is that Trump really believed at the end that this was a viable option. And someone like Mike Lee, and I think the Lee component's important. We report that Lee himself, is a serious lawyer on the right, is trying to look at this and says this just isn't possible. This is not, and that's why we also detail in the book how Senator Ted Cruz, he's telling Trump at the end on January 5th, look, we're going to object to Arizona. We're going to propose a commission to look into these issues. But even at that moment, Trump's saying to Cruz, based on our reporting, hey, you got to do more. You got to object to every state. There was an expectation that many Republicans found unreasonable, that Trump, they wanted to help Trump. Lee likes Trump. Cruz likes Trump. Eastman likes Trump. But there was an expectation by Trump at the end that these things could really move forward in a way that didn't seem legally or politically possible to a lot of people around the president.
You know, I'm reminded of P.J. O'Rourke. You don't give whiskey and the car keys to a teenage boy. You don't give scenarios on the Electoral College to a president who's facing defeat, when those scenarios simply cannot happen. Let me turn now to the consequences of Donald Trump's continued interest in the 2024 election. I moderated a Senate debate in Ohio among GOP candidates on Sunday night. 6 candidates, all with 7 figures budgets and rising, Robert Costa. These are all deeply well-financed candidates, 5 of whom are clearly trying to grab the former president's attention, one of whom, Matt Dolan, is running as Rob Portman. Do you think that's going to be replayed in every race in the United States in 2022?
It's certainly possible. I think if Virginia turns toward Youngkin, and I think the Youngkin model could become something you see in a lot of states that Republican candidates are going to go, hey, we may not want to be totally with Trump, but we can't walk away from Trump, and there's going to be a competition for how you navigate that in a primary. I don't think it's going to be Marjorie Taylor Greene in every single primary winning, that type of a true through-and-through Trump-style Republican, but you're not going to be a never-Trumper, I would expect, and win a lot of Republican primaries should the tide continue to move in that Trump direction.
Matt Dolan is not a never-Trumper. The interesting thing is the fusion of both with Glenn Youngkin. Glenn Youngkin has publicly said, I've got the forever Trumpers and the never Trumpers both supporting me over education. And I think that's the model. And the latest Monmouth poll is it's tied. I actually think McAuliffe is losing and Youngkin is winning. And this morning, the idea, well, Terry McAuliffe yesterday told WRC Channel 6, WTVR Channel 6 this, cut number 5.
But, this is Youngkin trying to stir up this critical race theory, which I'll be honest with you, Bill, I find highly offensive. Critical race theory is not taught in Virginia. It has never been taught. It is a racist dog whistle. And I'm really tired of it.
Now, the Daily Caller this morning, Robert Costa reports that Loudoun County forces parents to sign an NDA-style form to view the CRT-inspired curriculum. There clearly is CRT and its legacy in some school boards. Terry McAuliffe keeps dismissing people as racist who ask about it. Is that a winning strategy?
Well, I mean, there's a lot you just laid out there. When something is labeled CRT inspired, what does that mean? I got to read that story. I'm not tracking Loudoun County as closely as I should be, though I know Loudoun County seems to be in the national news every day. Like Terry McAuliffe, I live in Northern Virginia. You know Northern Virginia well, Hugh. There are government workers here. It's very vote rich. It's very moderate to liberal with a lot of the voters in Arlington and Alexandria. He needs terrific turnout, and he needs black voters in the rest of the state, in some of the more rural areas to come out. I'm not so sure. I don't, anecdotally in Northern Virginia, I still think this is a very Democratic area, so I'm not writing McAuliffe off at all, but you can see the Republican voters, especially swing voters on education, are certainly animated.
Yeah, my anecdotal reporting is moms who are facing quarantine rules for children who are largely unaffected by, even when they get the COVID virus, that get kids out of school for 24 education days. And Robert, that just doesn't fly with moms. I mean, they are up in arms. I think they're mixing up the CRT angst, which is true. This story, by the way, is about, it's well documented, the Second Step programs from a branch of the left-leaning nonprofit organization Committee for Children, which has been obtained by the Daily Caller. Go look at it. But there's not just CRT, it's also the COVID, the shutdown, just a lot of angst over everything. And I think Bob McDonald won fairly handily, didn't he, 8 years ago?
I covered that race. I covered McDonald closely in 2009. And I just remember when there's a Democratic president, it's hard for a Democratic gubernatorial candidate to win in Virginia, and it's something that's almost kind of a fundamental political reality. An incumbent first-term president of one party doesn't help someone running in the same party.
In Virginia, I think that is absolutely a bellwether call. Robert Costa, good to talk to you again. Go get Peril. It's in bookstores everywhere. He and Bob Woodward did their investigation of the end of the Trump presidency. I'll be right back. America, it's the Hugh Hewitt Show.
Portions of the Hugh Hewitt Show brought to you by Sierra Pacific Mortgage. For more info, call 888-888-1172.
Trending now on America First with Sebastian Gorka.
600,000 illegal aliens have been released into the country by CBP. 600,000 releases. And that's not counting who ICE is releasing at the order of political appointees within the DHS. So at least 600,000 releases that came across that border were released. Many with COVID, many with criminal histories. Add to that the 400,000, just short of 400,000 gotaways. Right there, that's a million.
Gotaways are ones who aren't processed or touched by
Gotaways
DHS.
are, first of all, gotaways are people that didn't get arrested by border, so they came across the border legally and weren't apprehended. Why? Because you're tied up with these big groups. We talked about this many times. The cartels in Mexico, some big groups in one area. They pose all the border patrol resources in that area. Then that's when they move their fentanyl and bad people.
Keep up with what's trending. Subscribe today at rumble.com.
Streaming on Salem Now.
The public would be outraged if they knew the truth.
Why do you think our politicians are not on the sidewalk right now talking to you?
Don't have no respect.
The old wall randomly turns into a guardrail, followed by miles of open border.
Human trafficking.
That journey is extremely dangerous.
The 7-year-old girl died in the desert.
From the country of India.
A great pillar of the community was killed by a man who had been deported at least twice.
This little urn contains the ashes of my son. His dreams cut short forever.
We're so worried about other countries' problems, and we don't even focus on our own.
Look for Salem Now in the App Store or go to salemnow.com.
Trending now on The Charlie Kirk Show.
We have people losing careers and multi-million-dollar jobs because they refuse to take the vaccine that does not 100% prevent you from getting the virus. Breakthrough cases, people with the vaccine who are vaccinated are dying, and yet they say we still need to destroy your life even if you have natural immunity, even if you have the antibodies. So one example in particular, there's two examples that highlight this, I think, rather well. The first is a place that all of you should go for lunch today, especially if you're listening on the West Coast. In-N-Out Burger. In-N-Out Burger is phenomenal. They are a wonderful company. They do a great job. The owners are Christians. And they deserve your support because now in San Francisco's only In-N-Out location, they've said, look, we are refusing to enforce the San Francisco vaccine mandate. We're not going to go ask people, show us your papers. And I'm going to be honest, people are fighting back. But to the level that we are tolerating the show me your papers, show me your medical records to go get a burger in San Francisco, America's fallen in a great regard. Now, San Francisco's its own place. San Francisco is the greatest example of anarcho-tyranny. Anarcho-tyranny where it's complete anarchy if you want to do drugs on the side of the street. If you want to defecate in a park, that's their idea of freedom. If you want to wear no clothes, you can walk through the streets of San Francisco.
Keep up with what's trending. Subscribe on YouTube and at rumble.com. Trending now on the Eric Metaxas Show.
By him, so you're at the top of your game in every way, and then you dare to write something that you weren't even dreaming of putting this in anybody's face. This was a private thing you did to share your faith. And somebody who's obviously a troublemaker decides, we're going to make an example of you. We don't like you daring to imply.
Keep up with what's trending. Subscribe today at rumble.com.
Perfect bump, Adam, because I rise to object. I'm Hugh Hewitt inside the Beltway. I rise to object to this story about Larry David, style icon in today's Wall Street Journal. Begins on September 12th. Larry David, the fusspot star of HBO's long-running Awk comedy Curb Your Enthusiasm, sat in the front row of the Stout fashion show in New York City. He did not appear to enjoy himself. The model swished past in buoyant primary-colored clothes. The 74-year-old comedian leaned forward, plugged his ears, stared straight at the floor. In an October appearance on Jimmy Kimmel, Mr. David explained the music at the Stout show was just too loud. Me, a fashion show? It's a little out of place, he told Kimmel. But Mr. David might be selling himself short on the fashion front. In the past several years, he has emerged as an unexpected fashion icon for his commitment to straight-legged khakis, thin V-neck sweaters, navy blazers, and practical sneakers. I object. I pioneered the uniform 30 years ago on Life and Times, appearing every night in a blue blazer and gray slacks and black loafers. I continue to appear every night in a blue blazer, button-down blue shirt, and gray slacks and black loafers. Everywhere I always go, it's a blue blazer, button-down blue shirt, and gray pants and black loafers. Once in a while, I will wear a suit. I do admit it. But the uniform is that. It was that before Curb Your Enthusiasm got going. He added sneakers. And the fetching Mrs. Hewitt pointed out to me as I was showing her this, that in the photo they've used on Jimmy Kimmel, he is wearing his socks inside out. They're Ralph Lauren socks. And the polo player is supposed to be on the outside ankle, and they're on the inside ankle. Now, I would never have noticed that, but I have the fetching Mrs. Hewitt to thank for that. Let me bring you up to speed on the markets, brought to you by AndrewandTodd.com. That's where you'll get a loan. And the 10-year Treasury has creeped up to 1.655%. It's going to be at 1.7% next week, and it's going to keep going up because inflation is going up. You heard Lawrence Summers earlier in this show, so you need to buy your house now. You go to AndrewandTodd.com or you call 888-888-1172, 888-888-1172. Slow down for phone numbers, podcasters. 888-888-1172. People who write the number down cannot hear 888-888-1172. They can't hear that. They got to hear 888-888-1172. Or Andrew and Todd with 2Ds.com. Markets yesterday, Dow up 64, NASDAQ up 136. Looks like another great day. Overseas, everything is green. Germany up 1%. Even in Japan, it's up 1.77%. Only China, which may be on the edge of a meltdown with the Evergrande, etc. It may be on the edge of its own 2008 in the People's Republic, which should not affect us much. But our stocks are doing really well, but interest rates are going up. Get your house now or don't get a house at all. You'll be priced out. Houses went up 20% year over year, and interest rates are down, so people are able to afford that 20% hike. They can finance it over 30 years. When interest rates go up, you're not going to be able to buy it, so get qualified today at AndrewandTodd.com. And also, please go over to HughHewitt.com and support Alliance Defending Freedom. It's the last week I'm going to tell you about ADF. I do it once a year. They're great sponsors of this show. They're guests all year long, and they come on and talk to people about why they do what they do, which is to protect religious liberty and free speech across the U.S. Can't do it without you. Hundreds of you have sent in $10, $50, $100, a couple of $1,000 donations. I'd love one big number to be written for them, someone out there who knows that ADF deserves it. Just go to HughHewitt.com and please send your donation. I really, really appreciate that. Headline, McAuliffe and Youngkin are in a dead heat with 1 week to Virginia governor elections. Dead heat is legacy media speak for we have no idea what's going on there, and we think McAuliffe is losing. And it all depends upon turnout, as legacy media speak, for we have no idea what's going on in Virginia, and we think Glenn Youngkin is winning. Glenn Youngkin has the momentum. Glenn Youngkin has the crowd. Now, you can trust me. Terry McAuliffe trusts me. What does Terry say about me?
I'm Terry McAuliffe, and you should listen to the Hugh Hewitt Show every single day, the greatest radio show in the United States of America.
That's Terry McAuliffe, and I'm telling you, vote for Glenn Youngkin. The greatest radio show in America, hosted by me, Hugh Hewitt, tells you vote for Glenn Youngkin because it's out of control down there. It's out of control all across the state. It's not just southwestern Virginia. It's in the suburbs. If you want your schools to work, you want your kids to go back to schools without crazy quarantine rules that nobody else has in the rest of the country, vote for Glenn Youngkin and vote today, early. You can vote early till Saturday. Stay tuned, America. I'm Hugh Hewitt.
Now. We'll see one young lady identify as transgender, and the next thing you know, 6 or 7 young ladies in that same school are now identifying as transgender.
Children taught at age 5 they can create their gender identity, and it's being celebrated.
Schools are lining up to push the transgender agenda on kids and cut parents out of the equation.
Every cell of their body that has a nucleus is male or female.
We've now seen parents losing custody of their children if they don't go along with this.
We've all been created XY or XX, so that means there's only 2 genders. And so really the battle is against the creator.
Look for Salem Now in the App Store or go to salemnow.com.
Trending now on the Dennis Prager Show.
Persuasion, the purpose of argument, is replaced with public shaming. Moral complexity is replaced with moral certainty. Facts are replaced with feelings. Ideas are replaced with identity. Forgiveness is replaced with punishment. Debate is replaced with deplatforming. Diversity is replaced with homogeneity of thought. Inclusion with exclusion. In this ideology, speech is violence. But violence, when carried out by the right people in pursuit of a just cause, is not violence at all. In this ideology, bullying is wrong unless you are bullying the right people, in which case it's very, very good. In this ideology, education is not about teaching people how to think. It's about re-educating them in what to think. In this ideology, the need to feel safe trumps the need to speak truthfully. In this ideology, if you do not tweet the right tweet or share the right slogan, your whole life can be ruined. Just ask Tiffany Riley, a Vermont school principal who was fired because she said she supports Black lives, but not the organization Black Lives Matter. In this ideology, intentions don't matter. That is why Emmanuel Cafferty, a Hispanic utility worker at San Diego Gas and Electric, was fired for making what someone said he thought was a white supremacist hand gesture, when in fact he was cracking his knuckles out of his car window.
Keep up with what's trending. Subscribe on YouTube and at rumble.com. Trending now on The Larry Elder Show.
Now, regarding calling ivermectin a dewormer, Joe Rogan has, I think, the most popular podcast in the country. And Dr. Sanjay Gupta of CNN was on. Rogan, like Dennis, contracted the coronavirus. Rogan, like Dennis, had never been vaccinated. And Rogan, like Dennis, had taken ivermectin. And Rogan was not happy that when CNN learned that Rogan, was taking ivermectin, they referred to it as a dewormer. Here's what happened.
Horse dewormer's not a flattering thing. I get that.
It's a lie. It's a lie on a news network, and it's a lie that's a willing. That's a lie that they're conscious of. This is not a mistake.
Yeah.
They're unfavorably framing it as veterinary medicine.
Well, the FDA put this thing out. You saw that. Did you see that thing that the FDA put out?
What did the FDA put out?
It was a tweet, and it was snarky. I admit it. They said, "You are not a horse, you are not a cow. Stop taking this stuff," or something like that.
Why would you say that when you're talking about a drug that's been given out to billions and billions of people, a drug that was responsible for one of the inventors of it making the Nobel Prize in 2015?
Yeah.
A drug that has been shown to stop viral replication in vitro. You know that, right? Why would they lie and say that's horse dewormer? I can afford people medicine, mother. This is ridiculous. It's just a lie.
I don't think anyone is.
But don't you think that a lie like that is dangerous on a news network when you know that they know they're lying? You know that they know that I took medicine. Like, here it is. This is ivermectin.
You got
this
it
is
with
right
you.
Here. Somebody gave it to me.
All right, hang on. The thing is, we're like going so fast. Like, I feel like I'm missing.
Keep up with what's trending. Subscribe on YouTube and at rumble.com.
The most powerful organs of the state are not merely corrupt, but that they've been weaponized.
We are now all rooting for his success.
That's not what happened. It was a complete ambush.
I thought it's early enough. Let's just send a couple guys over.
And the audience was, ha 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 ha. How funny to set up an innocent man.
It divided the country in ways that people can't imagine. It's inspired massive violence.
Look for Salem Now in the App Store or go to salemnow.com.
Trending now on the Mike Gallagher Show.
Welcome back, America. I'm Hugh Hewitt, joined now by Senator Tom Cotton from Arkansas. He's a little old-fashioned, but he wears it well. How are you, Senator?
I'm very well, Hugh. I hope you're well, too.
I'm great. I'm just back from Ohio. I'm going to talk to you about that in a second. But first, I have to say, you were right, and I was wrong. The Washington Post this morning has a headline, Democrats quietly scrambled to include immigration provision in social spending bill. I assumed that after the Senate parliamentarian told them they could not do that, they would stop trying to do that. And you said, no, they're up to no good. You're right. They're trying to put an amnesty into the reconciliation bill.
Hugh, the Democrats will never stop trying to put amnesty in any legislation, to include a taxing and spending measure where it obviously doesn't belong, because they are 100% committed to giving amnesty to illegal immigrants who have come here in violation of our laws and an affront to all those immigrants who waited in line and did the right thing and immigrated legally into our country. The latest gambit, I think, is Senator Durbin, who never fails to put foreigners first and Americans last, trying to change the date in which illegal immigrants can get a green card, which, of course, is a pathway to citizenship. I think the current law has it somewhere around the early 70s, which obviously excludes almost everyone, and they want to update that to, say, 2010. So
yes.
Anybody who's been here since before 2010 will be able to get a green card. Again, in a taxing and spending bill. Now, this has no place in that legislation. It's a plain violation of the Senate budgetary rules. I'm sure you can cook up some way in which it would have a budgetary impact, probably because of all the new welfare checks you'd be sending out. But still, under the Senate rules, it is what they call merely incidental to the policy impact. And this is plainly a massive policy change to implement the Democrats' open borders and amnesty agenda.
Now, on a certain professional level, I have to say nicely played to Senator Durbin. The idea of changing a date and thereby rewriting the immigration law to, in effect, loophole in the Reagan-era amnesty to the current date. That's kind of brilliant, Senator Cotton. Just one date. Who would have noticed?
Yeah, exactly. And oftentimes, immigration law is like that. It's a highly complex technical area of law in which changing one number or one date or one clause creates massive real-world consequences. But again, Hugh, just think about how unpopular the Democrats' argument is. They want to shoehorn a massive amnesty into a budgetary measure. So they have to argue that it has a budgetary impact. And why does it have that budgetary impact? Because you're going to make millions of illegal immigrants eligible for welfare checks and food stamps and heating assistance and public housing assistance at a time when many Americans are struggling to make ends meet. So the Democrats have to go out and contend that not only are we going to give amnesty to illegals, we're going to do so because it's going to make us spend a lot more on welfare payments. I don't think that's going to win many votes next fall. It's probably not going to win many votes in Virginia next week if the people in the Commonwealth of Virginia get wind of it.
You know, Glenn Youngkin is now described as being in a dead heat, and it all depends on turnout. That's legacy speak for Youngkin is ahead and Terry McAuliffe is going down. We have to CYA. And I think it's pretty, I don't know if you've been out on the trail with Glenn Youngkin. He's got crowds wherever he goes. His bus tour is a great success. He's surging.
Yeah, I've done a couple events with Glenn Youngkin, who I think is a very good man and a fine candidate and will make a great governor of the Commonwealth of Virginia. One of the venerable offices in our country, held by great statesmen like Thomas Jefferson and James Monroe. And I do think that Glenn is going to win next week in Virginia, in part because Terry McAuliffe is not just a washed-up, crooked swamp creature, but because he has a radical agenda. He's said publicly on television that he does not think parents should have a role in their kids' education. He's standing behind school boards who are sweeping underneath the rug rapes of young girls because it interferes with their transgendered agenda. To say nothing of Glenn's plans to actually help working families make ends meet during the Biden inflation by, say, eliminating the grocery tax that Virginia still shockingly has, unlike most states, and by making it harder to raise property taxes on working-class homes.
That washed-up, crooked swamp creature line is really effective, but I kind of like Terry because he taped this ad for me once. Can you play it, Adam?
I'm Terry McAuliffe, and you should listen to the Hugh Hewitt Show every single day, the greatest radio show in the United States of America.
Now, I think you probably agree with that, Senator Cotton, so I've got to thank Terry, even as I point out, Glenn Youngkin's going to crush him because of schools. I have family, and they are outraged over the quarantine rules in Virginia schools. They have no idea what they've done to the suburban mom.
And Hugh, there's other, there's the statement that parents shouldn't be involved in schools. There's the quarantine rules and the masking rules, which are obviously not necessary if you look what's happening in other states, or you look, for that matter, what's happening in schools across Europe. There's the elimination of the advanced classes and programs they have at great and venerable public schools like Thomas Jefferson, one of the finest public schools in America, which is also one of the toughest public schools to get into in America because they have selected admissions where you have to take a test and have a GPA standard and meet those. And why did they do that? It was because the administrators and bureaucrats in those schools thought there were too many Asian kids going to those schools. So the Democrat in Virginia has little Asian parents that want your kid in our school because they're students like you. The exact kind of policies that we started in this country 50 years ago. But that's what the Democrats have reverted to in many places across Virginia and across the country.
Yeah, keeping Asian American kids out of merit-based schools is a winning formula for nobody, and Democrats have embraced it. Senator Cotton, I want to go back to immigration because in Ohio on Sunday night, Josh Mandel said, I'm against amnesty, I want the wall, I stipulated that, and I don't want any more legal immigrants in the United States who are eligible for welfare benefits until every homeless veteran is housed. They're housing illegal immigrants in motels by the border, to which Bernie Moreno, the charismatic businessman from Cleveland, who is himself a legal immigrant, said, Josh, you're wrong. They're busing the illegal immigrants all over the country, flying them to different places all over the country. Is that correct, Senator Cotton?
Well, I didn't see the debate, Hugh. I do have it recorded because, of course, I never miss any appearance of Hugh Hewitt.
I think that's important. Yeah.
But, they are transporting illegal migrants all across the country. You saw the stories, I think, about a week ago of airplanes landing in the dead of night in places like Florida and New York State. And, it's funny that they're doing this in the dead of night, suggesting that they don't want people to know about it when they keep trumpeting their immigration policy as humane and humanitarian in contrast to former presidents. But they're also busing them across the country. I've been to the border. I fly through Dallas and Houston airports regularly to get home to Arkansas, and it's a very common sight to see people holding manila folders, and written on the outside of that folder is, I'm a migrant who doesn't speak English. Please help me find my flight. And then the flight number is written in on it. That's what our government is doing for these migrants and to communities. They really have no say in whether or not they're going to be inundated with bus loads or plane loads full of illegal migrants who have no means of supporting themselves, who don't speak our language, who are going to put a tax on their hospitals and schools and housing and other public services.
That's what Bernie Moreno was arguing. I will come back to that. Let me go back to something. You were in the forefront of killing off the attempt by the reconciliation bill to do away with stepped-up basis, because Arkansas farmers and foresters and people across the country were deeply concerned with this. Now it turns out that Ron Wyden and his team are drafting some kind of a law about unrealized capital gains, allegedly only for billionaires, and they say only 800 people will draft it. Well, putting aside the merits of the argument, and I don't think they're very good, of ever to tax unrealized capital gains, what is your level of confidence in their effective legislating so that unintended targets aren't hit by this?
I have zero confidence in the Democrats' ability to draft a highly complex, novel tax on the fly just to satisfy their desires for $2.5 trillion of breakfast news. To make it concrete, Hugh, for your audience, an unrealized gain is when you say buy a stock in January at $100, you hold it through the end of the year when it's selling at $150. Now the government's going to say, oh, you have $50 in gain, you have to give us 14 of those dollars as a tax, even though you don't have the cash. Of course, people who are very rich often shipped out of assets are taxed and shipped into assets who aren't taxed, so you could expect to see billionaires buying up private islands and horses and jewelry and paintings. I guess if they're going to be buying paintings, that's probably good for Hunter Biden, though, so there's one upside. Ron Wyden's new tax. But, Hugh, this is just really the camel's nose under the tent. They're not going after 700 billionaires in America. They can tax them all they want. In the end, it's not enough to satiate their desire for more taxes to spend on more welfare. They want to get this tax written into law so in the future they can start dropping it down further and further and further and further until they get to what they view as the golden goose, which is your 401k plan. In the end,
this is so smart.
Enough,
this is exactly.
It's good enough for billionaires. It's good enough for your 401k, and they're going to start taxing your 401k each year, making you pay those taxes on what you're putting aside for retirement.
Unrealized capital gains is the same for everyone. That they say it's a limited by income, it will go the same way as the income tax went. Started with a little income tax on the wealthiest people. It's now on everybody's back. If unrealized capital gains are taxed, it will expand to everyone, not billionaires. It is the camel's nose. Only I don't think they're even going to be able to write the law, Senator, because it requires competence to write a law like this, and they won't show anybody. When do you get to see a draft? Last question.
Yeah, and here, I mean, it's a good one good sign of that is that the Democratic chairman of the House Ways and Means Committee, Richard Neal, who's been writing tax laws for 30 years in Congress, he opposed it, in part because it's a highly complex effort to write an entirely new kind of tax into the law, and the Democrats are doing it in secret, on the fly, while they're trying to juggle another $4 trillion of spending, solely because they want that spending. So even if they do get it passed, one, it's probably going to have massive unintended consequences for our economy and for jobs. But two, it's probably going to be struck down as unconstitutional as well. This is the kind of taxing power that is reserved to the states in our system of government, and the federal government has never had the power to impose this kind of tax.
Senator Tom Cotton, on that note, thank you. You were right. I was wrong. I should never underestimate the perfidy of legislative efforts by Democrats. I won't do it again. Senator Tom Cotton of Arkansas, thank you. Let me remind everyone, Alliance Defending Freedom is out there supporting you every single day in ways you do not know, protecting your religious liberty. Listen to Pastor Chin in Seattle, who runs the Union Rescue Mission there.
All I can say is I thank God for Alliance Defending Freedom. When the Washington State Supreme Court said the Constitution does not protect our ability to be able to hire people who share our beliefs, we needed help. We're a rescue mission. We have tight budgets. And so having a partner like ADF has really been an answer to prayer.
I've met Pastor Chin. I've talked with Pastor Chin. He really does just put everything in the hands of ADF. But ADF needs you and me to help them. Go to HughHewitt.com. Please be as generous as you can. Don't forget as well, ReliefFactor.com. I'm about to talk to Sean Spicer. Maybe I'll send Sean because he has to run all over the Beltway. I see Sean running back and forth. ReliefFactor.com, ReliefFactor.com, ReliefFactor.com. I took it this morning. I took a double dose yesterday because my neck got screwed up on hotel pillows. I hate hotel pillows, but who's going to take a pillow with them when they travel? ReliefFactor.com. I'm going to have to triple up on the doses before I travel anymore because they're getting softer and softer. I need firm pillows. ReliefFactor.com takes nature's anti-inflammatories. Attacks inflation through your whole body with a systemic approach. I sat down with the doctor who invented it last month. It was a terrific lunch, a terrific science. Relief Factor works. Give it a try. $19.95. Come back. Sean Spicer, host of Spicer & Company, has this brand new book, Radical Nation. Available at Amazon.com. We're going to talk about the media in the future. Don't go anywhere. It's the Hugh Hewitt Show.
Portions of the Hugh Hewitt Show are brought to you by Alliance Defending Freedom.
Trending now on the Mike Gallagher Show.
And I'm intrigued. I shared with you a story of a reporter calling me, wanting to interview me about the role of talk radio and how we hosts influence our audiences. And he immediately launched in with this crap. Oh, what do you think about your friend Dennis Prager trying to kill people? Trying to kill people. Now, what do we do about it? Do we hide and tuck ourselves in bed and never leave the house? Or do we live our life and live with the virus? The virus doesn't appear to be planning to be eradicated anytime soon.
Keep up with what's trending. Subscribe on YouTube and at rumble.com. Trending now on America First with Sebastian Gorka.
Because frankly, sir, it appears that President Biden's message to one and all is that the U.S. has no limits to whom can come because the administration will not enforce any of its immigration laws. Is that the message this country will not enforce its immigration laws? And I will let you respond, sir.
No, it is not. And the president could not have been clearer in his articulation of this administration's position, nor could I have been clearer and continued to be so, which is the border is closed.
The border is closed, according to the man who runs the Department of Homeland Security for the senile old geezer in the White House, who sadly bears the title President of the United States. I think I have somebody in studio who begs to differ. We are one-on-one with none other than that truth teller extraordinaire, former director of ICE, Tom Homan. Welcome here on America First.
Thanks for having me, Seth. Appreciate it.
So you were there for how many years? 30 what?
34 and a half, almost 35.
34 and a half years serving this nation in numerous facilities, securing the border. Is the border closed like Secretary Mayorkas just said in front of Congress?
Absolutely not. And they need to take action. Look, he's under oath. I don't know how he's going to say the border's closed. We all seen the videotape. Look, 600,000 illegal aliens have been released into the country by CBP. 600,000 releases. And that's not counting who ICE is releasing at the order of political appointees with the DHS.
Keep up with what's trending. Subscribe today at rumble.com.
His most amazing discoveries thought to be written in a lost journal. Now, in the right hands, it could revolutionize the 21st century, but in the wrong hands, kill him. Joni.
If you can stop an earthquake, doesn't that mean you could start one too?
That's why that notebook should never fall into the wrong hands.
There's an old brown battered notebook.
Trending now on the Charlie Kirk Show.
Welcome back, America. I'm Hugh Hewitt. Sean Spicer, White House Press Secretary for Donald Trump, now the host of Spicer & Company on Newsmax every night, 6 p.m. Joins me. He's the author of this brand new book in my hand, Radical Nation, Joe Biden and Kamala Harris' Dangerous Plan for America. Sean, good to talk to you. Welcome back.
It's always good to be with you, Hugh. Thanks for having me back.
Sean, how do you find time to do a 5-night-a-week broadcast and write a book? 5 nights a week, Monday through Friday, for an hour is a lot of television.
There's a lot of people that can ask me that question, but when I look at you and see your show and the columns that you write, I'm trying to keep up with you. Just so we're clear on this.
Luckily, I can wear, pajama bottoms in the studio. I don't have to go get made up and all that stuff. Sean, I want to go right to the end and to the agenda, a conservative action agenda. Donald Trump blurbed your book. So did Newt. So did Dan Bongino, wonderful guy, Charlie Kirk, Mercedes Schlapp, Dana Loesch. Everybody blurbed your book because they liked the agenda that you laid out for conservatives in an opposition. Do you think that agenda will help Glenn Youngkin across the river? I think you're a Virginian. I'm a Virginian. I think Youngkin's going to win. What do you think?
I think right now he's going to win. The momentum's on his side. Look, we've seen the last several cycles of Virginia politics come down to 5 points or less for a lot of these statewide races. Youngkin's got the momentum going in. Terry McAuliffe has a base problem. Look at the people who are coming into Virginia and the places that they're going. They know that they have a problem with the base that got Biden elected in Virginia by a huge margin, and you've got a guy that was frankly a former popular governor struggling in the Northern Virginia area with minorities, with people who have traditionally voted Democrat. I mean, so the ads are starting to look like that the squad, AOC and her ilk wrote them for him because they know that there's a huge enthusiasm. So yeah, I think Youngkin's going to go over the finish line. I think that we're going to take back the House of Delegates in Virginia by a couple seats, and I really think that the under ticket, Winsome Sears for Lieutenant Governor and Jason Miyares for Lieutenant Governor, are both going to come over the line too.
Now, Sean Spicer, number 9 in your conservative action agenda, protect your children from radical indoctrination. Now, you wrote this. I imagine you had to go to press. You had to submit the manuscript in April or May, and you had no idea how Youngkin would get the nomination, which was by seizing on education, the end of merit and accelerated classes, and then win and put himself in a position to win by virtue of focusing on quarantine, COVID shutdown, masks, and especially CRT. But here you are, you're anticipating on page 271 of Radical Nation, which my audience can see if they're watching on YouTube. Have you got this propped up, by the way, on the set of Spicer and Company?
I'm working on it every night. Yeah, we make sure we plug appropriately.
Okay, because Admiral Stavridis comes on and he never doesn't have in the back of his screenshot for my YouTube and Facebook. He's always got 2034 up there, and I haven't seen yet whether Radical Nation is now on Newsmax 24/7.
Oh, we've done a good job. It's probably 23/7, but we're trying to get into that final hour. Okay, but I'll tell you the point that you're making, though. I will say, look, when you write a book and you know this, that you don't know what the environment's going to like when it publishes, because it takes months after you finish it. And I couldn't have been luckier in terms of what's happening now in terms of CRT and the other issues that I was talking about when I wrote this book, and them coming to fruition, them becoming to the forefront. I mean, obviously in Virginia, this is a big deal, but frankly, it's a big deal throughout the country right now, and people are realizing what's happening. You have people like President Obama dismissing them as conservative, follies, when in fact it's a real issue for every parent around the country.
When we come back, we're going to do the podcast today with Sean. At the end of the show, he's going to stick around and do the podcast, the interview with Hugh Hewitt, and go deep into Radical Nation, the brand new book. But I got to ask, in terms of your, I want the radio audience to hear your assessment of Jen Psaki. I've read it. There are 2 chapters on the new media landscape, and Jen Psaki's in both of them. She's loved by the left. What do you think of her professional approach, Sean?
Here's the thing. I think she does fine. My issue is always with the press corps. I think these guys let her off every day of the week. They were former colleagues of hers when she was at CNN. They're buddies. This is not. There's no pushback. There's no reconciling the double standards, the hypocrisy, the failed policies. So, she gets out there. I think it's cute every day, the way that she sort of throws back questions at Peter Doocy or whoever and tries to make it funny. But it's really pathetic the way that the rest of the press corps sits there and just laughs it up.
So let me ask you, Sean, if President Trump had said in a town hall, "We will defend China," in other words, on an impulse, doing away with strategic ambiguity, which I think should be done away with, but not on an impulse, and then walked it back, how would your week have been as press secretary?
First of all, I don't know how I would have made it out of the day. There are so many things that happened in that CNN town hall, And they dismissed them all. Like, that's the thing. It's like batting balls away. They were like, oh, he just misspoke. He was tired. He was up past 9. I don't understand how he can make so many mistakes and be so unclear as to U.S. policy. I mean, this guy was vice president for 8 years, chairman of the Foreign Relations Committee, and he doesn't know U.S. policy with respect to Taiwan. I mean, what? And by the way, you're going to screw up that. You don't send your press secretary out the next day to do a little mop-up. You make sure that you do something about it, because the Chinese certainly want to make sure that it's not just the press secretary that's cleaning up. The president believes it.
I'm going to be back with Sean Spicer on the podcast, interview with Hugh Hewitt. Go out and get Radical Nation. It's available at Amazon.com. It's a primer on everything that's going down at 1600, as you would expect from the host of Spicer and Company, former White House Press Secretary Sean Spicer. Stay tuned, America, to this station. Make sure you get my podcast, interview with Hugh Hewitt, for an in-depth conversation with Sean Spicer.